See this guy here? He's a slave trader. Out of nowhere, a couple shows up with an offer that would leave anyone speechless. It's crazy that they wanted to give away their own child like that. The dealer, even though he's tough, refuses right away. What kind of parents do something like that? But then a rich guy raises his hand, interested in them. He really likes the kid. This nobleman is always traveling around, always on the hunt for stars for his arena. Without a second thought, the couple sends the child off to the buyer who's already heading out. My goodness, the trafficker just couldn't believe it. A baby thrown into fights against some bizarre beast. Then we shift focus to the nobleman. He's obsessed with the perfect warrior. His vibe is simple: more fights, more spectacle, and more money in his pocket. The nobleman gets a bit down since most of his acquisitions don't have that champion spark, until one day a sinister warrior catches his eye. The guy's presence was so intense it gave the nobleman goosebumps from head to toe, and this was exactly the kind of fighter his arena needed. Pure excitement. But what a surprise, this brute sold his own son. What a bizarre plot twist, right? The nobleman's mind was racing. Legendary warrior, and now he had the guy's heir. Without even blinking, he bought the kid and threw him into the champion's pit. Tired of finding awesome manhwa and not having a translation to read? Well, relax, man. With Manhwa Recap Studio, you can solve that in seconds. The site translates any chapter straight from the image using automatic OCR. You can also clean speech bubbles, translate to any language you want, and delivers everything ready to go. It's like a legendary system that drops instant translations. And hey, there's a free 3-day trial, so take advantage and farm without worry. Now, if you're like me and create content, things get even crazier. You can pull text from the speech bubbles, extract all the images from the chapters without having to screenshot one by one, and even use an AI script rewriter that makes everything smoother. In the end, the site saves you up to 60% of your video production time and even gives a boost to the quality, so don't waste any time. Go to manhwarecapstudio.com now and find out how to farm time, translation, and performance all in one place. He handed over the responsibility to his best gladiator. Train this kid for real, and you will be rewarded as a true champion. The fighting man looked at the baby with zero hope. There was no chance. This hostile place was no place for a child. It was more like a tomb. But the boy clung to life. A true miracle amidst the debris and weapons. What a star! He ate with bizarre desire, dragging himself along with force. The gladiator Caesar realized it immediately. This kid is not just anyone. Maybe it was worth a shot. He taught him a move, and a little genius picked it up right away. When no one showed him anything, he figured out the secrets of that place on his own. The boy grew up and became a badass until he reached the age to walk his own path. To his mentor, the young man had become a complete mystery, but his debut in the arena would reveal who he truly was. Fighting without a second thought, the boy unleashed a power that left his opponent frozen with fear. The experienced gladiator couldn't believe what he was seeing. The perfection of the fight was unfolding right before his eyes. The mentor noticed something bizarre in his gaze. It wasn't technique, it was pure instinct in the guy's fighting style. It was as if the arena itself lived through him, a fight for survival. Maybe this boy wasn't human, but rather the force of nature itself, always present. Time passed, and the mentor, now old, faced his own end in the arena. Exhausted and completely broken, the gladiator felt that his final moment had come. But out of nowhere, the boy came running, causing chaos to reach him in his final seconds. The mentor finally understood the true essence of the creature he had created. He wasn't a child, nor was he a warrior. He was an untamable beast, relentless and thirsty for victory. The arena fell into absolute silence, with the young man standing among the fallen, including his master. And so ends the journey of a child abandoned by his parents, and now, poor thing, orphaned by the one who raised him. But even so, the kid survived and grew up in the arena until he became a man. Now a new adventure seemed to await him, with the mission of getting him out of that hell, guided by a new acquaintance. Fate threw him into a gambling den where money flowed freely at every moment. That same guy dragged a naive student into his shady schemes. The newcomer turns pale when he sees the illegal gambling game. If the school finds out about this, things will go south. His mentor laughs in his face. This place is a ring for rich fools to lose their money. Stop being a coward and get in. And he pushes him right into the middle of the crowd. With nervous steps, the student enters the darkness. Surrounded, he rebels. He only came here to study, not to get his hands dirty with this. Today he was supposed to go back to college and pay his tuition, but the scammer grins wickedly, showing off a bag full of cash. What's the matter? You're way too naive. The student's eyes go wide as he instantly realizes it was a trap. Suddenly, the college student feels a shove. Where's the money that was here? It's gone, shouts the newcomer, seeing his wad of cash on the bed and table. But that guy mocks him, telling him to shut up and stay quiet. In the end, once you're in, there's no turning back. The cynic just adds fuel to the fire. Look, I'm going to put my share in the bed too. With a slight smile, the scammer says, now let's see what our investment will get us. The student starts to complain. So much effort to pay for college, and he ended up in this mess because of that guy. He remembers his father with pride. He taught him not to be wild and always believed in him. And his sister, who idolized him, he can't let her down. His mother was a warrior too, a memory of sacrifice and endless gratitude. He clenches his fist, praying for the money and promising he'll never make this mistake again. Enough of fake people. He promises to cut all ties with that scammer, but the scammer couldn't care less about his drama. He gives a thumbs up and lets the show begin. Before his eyes, an arena of nightmares, a pit filled with thorns and torches, the circle of noble justice, a hole full of sharp spears under an indifferent sky. The bold one says, "Let's go," while the newcomer feels like he's sinking deeper and deeper. The master announces the first participant, a barbarian from the cold and violent lands of the north who became a slave. Now his master gives him one more chance to show his strength, and now presenting the bearer of the muscles of death, a club and a gaze that freezes the soul. The whole crowd goes wild, eager to see blood. The guy smiles with arrogant confidence. Wow, what a monster, huh? The student's stomach starts to churn, and it seems like his situation is much worse than he imagined. The spikes in the pit are silent witnesses to the brutality. You can smell death in the air. The tense atmosphere of this place hangs heavily, giving off a terrible vibe. The newcomer can barely look. Is this really what we're here for? He thinks, horrified. Did we really bet on this? The bringer of death, the student asks, trembling. So the guide comments, pointing to the arena. Our guy is the happy one. He's coming in. But the student doesn't trust anything anymore. The whole situation feels like a bad joke, but the guide insists it's better to wait and see. The host, all pompous, announces, "It's time for tonight's next performer," a college student with a smile on his face. Is that name meant to be ironic, or is it a warning of a nightmare to come? The super enthusiastic MC does his part, announcing the fighter's entrance. The crowd goes wild, screaming and celebrating like there's no tomorrow. The student senses a strange energy in the air. Something really weird is going on. His eyes are fixed on the arena, trying to unravel the mystery that's about to unfold. The happy guy appears, a young man with a bright smile and messy hair. The newcomer is confused, with 1,000 questions popping up in his head. William, the student, is left speechless for a moment. He's completely in shock. From their perspective, look at that. The happy guy in the middle of the chaos, surrounded by spears in a crowd hungry for action. The new fighter shows up without armor or weapons, just in his simple clothes and with that smile plastered on his face, and also barefoot. Totally relaxed, at ease, with simple bandages, he steps into the arena with a very young, smooth face, smiling as if nothing could threaten him. But the brutality of the place is a harsh reality check. William isn't buying it. Man, this is so wrong. It's obvious this kid has some kind of issue. His gaze seems kind of lost, and he's also unarmed. William tells himself they're sending this guy to certain death. The thief and his partner watch the scene with chills running down their spines. William looks at the crowd with disgust. Why are you all so happy, you heartless bunch? The man of death frowns. What kind of joke is this? Is this a test, or has the show already started? The barbarian lowers his gaze with grim determination. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I was planning to take everyone out and get the hell out of here, simple as that. The warrior growls and tenses all his muscles. The bringer of death raises his club. The first victim has already been sentenced to death. The giant weapon swings toward the smiley man's face, and he doesn't even flinch. The blow is about to land. William hides his face, and the impact sends the happy guy flying straight into the spikes, right between his fingers. The student witnesses a scene that will paralyze even the bravest soul. The echo of its aftermath lingers in the air. The happy guy lies motionless in the arena, and the close-up of William's eye reflects the absolute horror of that outcome. But wait, that happy guy is still alive, moving and struggling to get up. Now William is horrified and thinks, no, just stay down, man. This can't be real. Anguish consumes the poor student. The college student snaps, can't take it anymore, and shouts for someone to at least give him a weapon. What a horrible way to die. William, with a muffled scream, begs for them to stop immediately, while the happy guy is already in the middle of the spears. The student, on the verge of breaking down, whispers that he doesn't want to watch this carnage anymore. He can't bear the sight. William covers his face, consumed by despair. A painful memory invades his mind. Poor guy, his father's lessons about the harsh life of the less fortunate. As a child, he saw the suffering of others up close, watching a boy trapped behind makeshift bars. Young William asked his father, "But it's not fair. This child deserves a chance." But his father replied without any pity, "They were born slaves, and their lives are already decided." His father told him to look at the vast and beautiful kingdom, to ignore the sadness of others. "This is our path, William." And so it ended, the father shaping the child's view of the boy trapped behind the bars. Little William clutched the book tightly, his anchor amid the uncertainty. But William's mother clung to a bar, reliving the oppression of her own childhood. Young William, behind the bars, watched helplessly at a cruel world from his barred window. The child contemplated the brutality of the abuse, a vision that would forever mark his memory. The sadistic con man asked William if he feels bad seeing all his money bet in the arena. Suddenly, the executioner charges forward, hatred written all over his face, smiling unabated. The barbarian makes a face and tells William not to judge the young warrior so harshly. Suddenly, a terrifying blow lands on the happy one's face, the brutality of combat in its purest form. The eyes of the bringer of destruction shine with such fury that it cannot be tamed, hungry for victory. William shouts, "No!" Heartbreaking, poor guy. But he foresees the tragic and imminent end. Then, in the blink of an eye, William's eyes meet the happy guy's eyes, a moment of deadly connection. Not even the thorns can wipe away that smile, a bizarre joy in every strand of hair. William is having hallucinations. Maybe his college notes explain all this madness. The harbinger of death advances again, but the happy guy already has another move in mind. With the agility of an acrobat, the young man dodges the attack, breathes a sigh of relief with a smile on his face, and lands a kick to the giant's chin that looks straight out of an action movie. The barbarian loses his balance as he wonders where this skinny guy with an iron kick came from. William can't believe it and starts pinching himself as if he doesn't trust what he's seeing. This nightmare feels pretty realistic, huh? Total silence in that arena. Everyone even forgot to breathe, let alone scream. The impact reverberates like an echo, and the giant tastes the bitter flavor of surprise in the arena sand. But the guy gets back up, the electricity of anxiety in every fight. Then the crowd's applause echoes like a symphony of past victories, and once again his defiant smile anticipates the next move. A cycle repeats itself. With a precise blow, another opponent is on the ground. William grips the bar with white-knuckled fingers, extremely tense and quite scared. His movements become a deadly dance, leaving the barbarian completely lost. William's jaw tightens. His eyes can't believe the display of such skill. Absolute dominance is the phrase that brutally and honestly describes the scene. He is dominating the arena. He subdues the giant with surreal agility. The bringer of death has been defeated. The unexpected winner looks on, satisfied at the giant now fallen in the arena. The bringer of death has been dethroned. A happy man celebrates his victory with a wide smile and raised fists. William watches the whole scene in complete shock. Unable to believe it, while the crowd shouts the winner's name, the swindler approaches William with congratulations and a supposed bag of winnings. But disappointment hits William hard. Where was all the money? The only thing in there shining is a copper coin, as if it were a joke. A copper coin! William can't believe the misery of his prize. The swindler, with a look of superiority, shows him a revealing piece of paper. The document explains everything. The happy guy has a win rate of about 99%. Betting on him doesn't bring any profits at all. The scammer chuckles and returns all the original money. The bet was a complete sham. The swindler flashes a mischievous grin, bringing even more confusion to William's mind. William is still trying to process the shock. The adrenaline is so intense that he can barely utter a word. The next fights were exactly what William feared in the arena. Pure brutality and savagery. A grotesque show completely different from the happy guy's fight. Poor William, it could even last 10 minutes. The swindler surprisingly asks if he's already heading out. Back at the gym, William uses the money he got back to pay for his membership, and as if nothing had happened, he returns to his study routine in his room. By candlelight, the boy buries himself in his books, his pen gliding smoothly across the paper, his victories and academic awards serving as silent proof of his dedication. Suddenly, the pen stops. A spark of determination shines in William's eyes. William presses the pen and the ink flows with a new conviction. A piercing gaze reveals the storm of ideas in his mind. The copper coin on the table, an amulet or a joke of fate? He closes the book heavily, realizing that what he has learned about this world is no longer enough. The candles go out with a simple breath, and the room plunges into the darkness of his thoughts. Through the window, the starry night seems to spy on his mind. In the stillness of his room, William lies with his eyes wide open, his mind racing. His peace has gone to the spa. Red visions and strange shadows invade his window. William's face contorts, and he is trapped in the grip of a nightmare that won't end. His eyes shining with a strange light, reflecting odd smiles in the echo of the arena. Suddenly, William wakes up completely terrified. The fear from that night still haunts this guy. Panting a bit lost, he wonders if the nightmare ends when the sun rises. The rooster's crow announces a new day, but the restlessness remains. On campus, a student shows off, inviting everyone to the bar. Yeah, life goes on as usual for some, and suddenly William shows up with a cold look, interrupting the conversation with the upperclassmen. The classmate, when questioned, is shaking in his boots. What's up with William's look, man? And he comes up with a really sinister proposal. William suggests repeating the fun in the arena. Of course, another rooster crows, marking the time, maybe someone's alarm clock. In this crazy game, surprise, the wounded fighter suddenly opens his eyes. Did he have the same nightmare? His partner immediately gives him a heads up. Slept well since the last beating? And now it's time to get ready, the arena is calling. The wounded man angrily remembers that his opponent's gaze won't leave his mind. His partner comments about that guy while the veteran watches everything with sarcasm. The veteran lets out the secret. The happy guy is there to open the show, not to kill, which makes sense too, right? The wounded man doesn't buy that explanation and insists it was just a slip-up on his part, just a stroke of luck. Alright, the experienced veteran laughs with disdain. If the happy guy wanted to, you'd already be 6 feet under. The fighter doesn't believe it and grinds his teeth in anger. The provocation is right in his face, no holding back. An experienced fighter points the way for those who lost. A brutal warning. The tension just keeps rising. The injured guy's fist is trembling, but the veteran just tells it like it is. The young man joins the conversation with a big grin. The arena is for fighting, not a hospital. The wounded guy's partner is a pretty weird dude who replies, "Yes sir," full of enthusiasm. The veteran glares with eyes full of anger. I can't believe what this rookie is doing. Suddenly an eerie silence takes over the entire infirmary while the veteran watches the other prisoners, and this kid runs everything here. The veteran looks down on the happy guy. This guy thinks the rookie is getting cocky with the reputation he's building. He thinks the rookie only won by luck because the fighter was injured. Everyone in the arena is a bunch of weaklings. A crazy psychopathic smile appears on his face. This is his world and he wants to rule it. So he stands finally in front of the happy guy, calling him a runt and acting like he's in charge. The veteran asks the happy guy how he ended up in the arena. Smiling in an innocent way, he says that his father sold him as soon as he was born, leaving the veteran in complete shock. The happy guy, with a bright smile, says he was raised here and all he knows is how to fight. Well, the veteran doesn't believe it and asks why everyone gets scared stiff in front of him if he used to train with them. Our happy boy says he was mistaken while calmly taking off his shirt, revealing a tight band on his wrist, getting ready for something completely unexpected. Smiling, he reveals his incredible physique. His masters have been gone for a long time, and the veteran's eyes are now filled with confusion as a cold sweat runs down his forehead. The happy guy says there's no one left, no one to train with or challenge, only rookies. With a tap on the shoulder, the happy guy points at the veteran with joy as he reveals his tactic, letting himself get hurt to excite the crowd. The veteran opponent just stands there, unable to react. That revelation leaves him speechless. A smile from him recalls the fight, and the hammer's head seems about to crush him, but the young man stops the weapon with his bare hands. Smiling, he exclaims, "That's insane." The spikes dig into his skin, blood gushes out, but his grip is like steel. He makes a face of pain, but he's just messing around. The happy guy pushes his opponent toward a spiky end. An experienced fighter catches on, horrified. "You gotta be kidding me, right?" The happy guy, with his hand on the veteran's shoulder, realizes the veteran is shaking. "No need to fight during the break," he says sweetly. "Either way, we're going to die here anyway." The veteran tries to find some words and starts to stammer, but the happy guy cuts him off with a smile and says, "Excuse me," and he punches the dummy right in the middle, smashing it completely. The rag doll is left completely broken on the floor. The other inmates watch and one of them says, satisfied, "The truth is everyone goes through this at the beginning, so William got another ticket to the arena, huh?" Wearing a silver mask like armor, William, a bit lost, wonders about the new nickname he's gotten, and his face really is made of iron. A really quick memory flashes of the student from campus, hands the pass to William to enjoy a student, who gives him the money for the outing and is meant for betting with very specific instructions. William now sighs. She seems like just another player, but he wanted to see her again, all excited with the pass in hand. William worries about getting into the arena. A show is about to go on. Now the scene shifts to the gravedigger's house, an extremely dark and gloomy place. An old gravedigger addresses Saga. "Let's go fetch the bodies from the arena, Lukasha." We notice that Saga is carrying an anatomy book as he replies, "Yes, Master Gravedigger." Then both of them head out with the cart toward the imposing arena, the Eye of Lukasha. The old man looks at the battlefield, thinking that just one cart won't be enough for so many fallen bodies. Saga, ever practical, assures him that they'll stack up just fine. The professor is confident in his new assistant. The gravedigger praises Saga's efficiency, having only been on the job for a month. As he carries a body, Saga covers his face, paying no mind to his boss's pride. As he grabs the wrist of one of the fallen, Saga notices a curious detail in the marks. His eyes widening, a revelation begins to take shape in his mind. Saga observes closely, and notices that almost all the bodies show the same marks, the same bruises. He deduces that, judging by the shape and size, the marks were made by empty hands, in other words, without weapons. Then he realizes something. The wounds are old, and not from the final battle. But one thing puzzles him. Why are there so many bodies here with no signs of struggle and no weapons among them? Suddenly, the old gravedigger calls out to him urgently. It seems he has found something. Saga approaches. "What's going on, Professor?" The old man looks worried. The professor points to a corpse which appears to be the missing member of the royal family. Comparing it to a poster, he confirms that the marks in the teeth match, considering his condition and noble status. He disappeared a month ago, found dead in the arena. Saga, full of conviction, announces that he will inform the feudal lord and the church right away. But the old man grabs him forcefully. "Wait a minute." Frightened, the professor warns, "This could get us in trouble too." The old gravedigger warns Saga about the king's temper, afraid of bizarre accusations if they speak up. with sweat running down his forehead. The professor suggests that maybe it's better to bury the body quietly and forget about this whole saga. Saga listens in silence but looks deep in thought. The professor says that the cowardly criminal needs to pay and that he will fight for justice, even if it costs him his own life. Saga lives determined, saying that he will come back while the old man tries to stop the boy but without any success. The old gravedigger watched with his mind racing, panic and wildness written all over his face, and saw the assistant he had hired without thinking it through disappear, watching Saga vanish into the vastness. Saga, with a serious look on his face, already knew that if he opened his mouth, everyone connected to the arena would suffer the consequences. Back to William, he clutched the arena ticket, lost in thought again, facing the massive building that awaited him, preparing himself for the duel with the happy guy. Happy's fight. A scorching sun lit up the entire sky, promising a very calm day. Suddenly dark clouds form, a sign of drastic change, and a lightning bolt splits the sky. Meanwhile, the woman watches through the window. The storm has arrived inside. The young woman worries about the weather. Her fear is confirmed, but she is surprised. What mystery could this storm be bringing her? Armed gentlemen knock on her door right in the middle of the downpour. She can't believe that these are the imposing and strong royal guards. What urgent matters have brought these men here? The soldiers stand ready, their leader at the front advancing toward the imposing building even under the relentless rain. A heavy weapon slams against the ground with force, and the action is about to begin. The guard leader shouts that the royal assassin is hiding in that building and orders them to capture everyone. If there is any resistance, send them to the grave. His men react immediately, answering at once, yes, they are ready for the attack. Meanwhile, in the arena, the brutal fight leaves the fighter on the ground, and William is disgusted. He wonders if all the fights are this pathetic, except for the fights of that cheerful guy. The host then announces with extreme enthusiasm the main event of the day, and with just a gesture he addresses the eager crowd, asking if they remember the serial killer who left the village in panic a month ago. Everyone doubted that this guy really existed and thought it was impossible. The host reveals that no patrol was able to catch him, and he earned the nickname Demon of the Night, and everyone wondered why this guy still wasn't in jail. With his finger raised he shouts, announcing the demon himself. His first fight could be against no one else but our smiling, cheerful guy. William is now pale, watching and barely able to believe it. That killer right there, the Demon of the Night, springs into action, and the master announcer shouts as an extremely sinister smile emerges from that darkness. The Demon of the Night makes his entrance, thinking the fun is just getting started. Ah, they brought him to a paradise. He starts caressing his weapons, saying that on the night of liberation they're going to have some fun. Then suddenly a heavy boot stomps down hard, and he turns around furiously, surprised by the unexpected arrival. The captain of the royal guard, full of indignation, asks how this scum destined for hell is here. Well, that Demon of the Night, with a look of complete confusion, wants to know who this brave soldier is. The captain thinks extremely seriously. If this location just takes criminals out of prison like that, his connections with the kingdom must run pretty deep. The Demon of the Night, with his eyes shining, is right in front of you, and the captain's mind is already working. A reddish gleam in his eyes tells us that he figured everything out. Ah, the door is open. The criminal is extremely cunning and notices the opportunity. He sees the golden opportunity behind the guard. They even put a weapon in my hand. The assassin feels that fate is blowing in his favor. With anger and a twisted psychopath smile, he moves forward, thinking it's an invitation to freedom. He grips his weapon tightly, ready to use it without even blinking, without any mercy. The fugitive attacks and tries to force his way toward the captain. Meanwhile, in the arena, the master's absence is noticed. What's going on? Where is this fighter they've been waiting for so much? Everyone is starting to doubt and shouting, they're lying to us, there's no way that monster is really here. William watches everything, extremely tense, and out of nowhere one of the spectators shouts, wait, look over there. This guy just drew everyone's attention, including William's. He also turns to look and realizes that a true gentleman appears, and bursts onto the scene. The captain roars furiously, drawing everyone's attention with a silly gaze as the stern officer declares, on your knees, I'm going to arrest everyone. You're all suspects in the murder of a member of the royal family. Wow, William is stunned by the situation, and an old man shouts that he's innocent while trying to escape. William is shocked to realize that chaos is breaking out, and anyone who tries to resist will be taken down without a second thought. The situation is extremely tense and critical, and the king has already given his orders. His command to kneel was firm and non-negotiable. William finds himself on his knees, watching his money and his past thrown to the ground. Poor guy. The captain is already getting impatient with the disobedience. Huh, didn't they hear my order to kneel? Then, from the middle of that surrendered crowd, the happy guy stands up with a bold smile, defying the captain. The captain, extremely stern, asks him directly, you think this situation is funny, do you? Our happy guy keeps smiling, beaming with a piercing gaze. He remains silent in front of the officer. Felix quickly bends down, but not to show respect. Instead, he uses it to gain momentum and charges at the captain. The captain can't understand why this guy insists on fighting. Suddenly, he grabs his halberd while Felix stomps so hard that the whole ground shakes. The captain swings the halberd, barely missing Felix's face, while Felix keeps smiling. The captain can't figure out what's going on with this young man. He stopped very close to him without even throwing a single punch. What's going on over there? Then Felix ducks, dodging the captain's attack once again. As he does this, he gathers momentum and leaps toward the captain's head. He moves his arms quickly, grabs the captain's head, and knees him right in the middle of the face. The blow was so strong that it left his vision completely white for a few moments. All the soldiers and even the bystanders were terrified by what was happening, but Felix kept smiling, spun his body, and landed on his feet. The captain felt that blow, and his nose even started to bleed as he called that guy a little bastard and gripped his halberd tightly again, shouting and getting ready to deliver another blow. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. He got very close to Felix and realized that this little boy was anticipating his next move. Attack before he even made it. He was so close to striking, yet at the same time so far from being able to finish it. He looked at Felix's face and then glanced down, realizing that Felix had a strike ready to land on his stomach. At that distance, he wouldn't be able to dodge. He realized that this was the perfect moment for him to throw a punch, a single move. So he tried to grab Felix, but Felix punched him right in the face. The uppercut the captain took was so strong that the sound of the impact was like small explosions going off inside. With that blow, the captain was thrown far back, screaming. William couldn't believe how strong Felix was, but the captain managed to withstand it and got ready to charge again. Meanwhile, William couldn't believe that the guy kept holding on. The captain, shouting in rage, gripped his halberd tightly again and tried to strike once more, but without any success. Felix wasn't there anymore. He wondered where that boy had gone. While he was wondering where Felix was, Felix came in with a precise sweep, knocking the captain to the ground with his face bloodied and scraped against the floor. The captain looked up and saw Felix's happy smile. After the troops realized the captain had lost, they all aimed their spears and arrows at Felix, but none of them managed to hit him. Felix dodged several shots, caught arrows in his hand, and managed to evade the arrows perfectly. The guards asked if the captain was all right, and the captain couldn't believe how that bastard could have such precise movements. What on earth is happening? He widened his eyes as he thought, who is this guy? But Felix was there on the ground with an arrow stuck in his neck, still wearing an evil grin on his face. The captain stared, unable to make sense of the situation. How was this guy lying there with two arrows, one in his chest and another in his neck, and still smiling? The captain thinks Felix is looking at him and mocking him. Does this bastard want to savor this humiliation to the very end? He gets up, filled with determination. If that's how it is, he'll do just as he wishes. He'll have to finish off that bastard right then and there. Suddenly, someone shouts, telling him to stop. The captain looks to see who it is, and a chubby guy comes running up, yelling, "This is Lucas Chen. He ran a lot to get there and is drenched in sweat." He starts saying that the guy only fought because he thought it was an arena match. He's never been out in the outside world, so he doesn't understand the situation. The chubby guy starts that anyone who enters the arena with equipment, he just sees as the next opponent. This guy is just a trained dog. The captain looks at the chubby guy, and then looks at Happy, and he gets even angrier and starts pure Felix. But the man keeps shouting that the expression he has is just a disability he's had since childhood. His facial nerves are all damaged, causing his muscles to freeze like that. The captain asks how, but the guy keeps saying it's just too hard to believe. Even he didn't believe it at first, but it's always been that way. Because of that expression, everyone thought Felix was always happy and cheerful, even when he was abandoned by his parents and searching for his mother and father. Even when he was stabbed with weapons and bleeding, he kept on smiling. He even seemed happy when the person who raised him was dying. For this reason, Felix was constantly called a demon, misunderstood and suffering in prison. Poor thing, there was no one to protect him. The gladiators and prisoners would gang up in droves to beat him. However, he only survived because he was definitely good at fighting. After all, if he weren't good, he would have already died in those cells. Lucas Chan watched Happy's entire life, and knows that after taking a serious beating, he would look at Happy's face, and he still had that happy expression. But it was all just a facial deficiency. This guy simply can't express himself. He's always scared, sad, and desperate. The captain lets go of his habit, while Lucas Chan says that people just can't believe this could be true. Lucas Chan tells the captain to look at him again and see if he looks happy even when he's in pain. People were captivated by Happy's outward appearance and became more enthusiastic, continuing to come back. He was also enchanted by the happiness, and that's why he didn't run away and came there for him. That is the simplest way he can give back for the joy he was given, a joy he had never felt in his life before Happy arrived. Well, the captain grabs his halberd again and says that this is nothing but nonsense. Everyone there is going to die anyway. He turns the halberd sideways and strikes Lucas Chan right in the face, knocking him to the ground. The next day, Lucas Chan admitted his crimes and was hanged along with those who ran that prison. That bloody arena, that gallows, was erected in the most visible spot in the city, right below the balcony where the king would stand and look out over the city every morning. In this way, it somewhat soothed the king's anger. Meanwhile, in prison, awaiting the day of execution, William said he didn't want to die there, and he trembled with fear inside that cold cell. While people said that everyone involved had already been killed and now it was their turn, he wondered how it had come to this execution. What had he done to deserve this? He mentally begged for someone to spare his life, and also pleaded for forgiveness. Happy Face was also in his cell and asked if he was okay. He didn't even understand how the happy guy had gotten there and was startled. Happy said he'd been locked up there with him since yesterday. Happy noticed that this guy had been talking to himself for a long time and he was just watching. Now William realized he was so out of it that he hadn't noticed anything around him, but then the memory of Happy Face being struck by all those arrows came to mind. Wasn't he hit by several arrows? How was he okay? He just pretended he was pierced and lay down, and he says this while smiling. It's unbelievable. How can this guy have such precise movements and such a fast reaction time like that? He remembers that Noble said that his pain nerves were all damaged, causing his muscles to freeze and he couldn't express himself either. But people say that he's also scared now. Is he really? But Happy, still smiling, says, of course he's scared. After all, they're about to die. William just watches. He noticed that the happy guy said he was scared, but everything he says doesn't match his body language, which made William chuckle a bit. Happy asks if it's funny, and William starts to stutter. No, that's not what I meant. I was laughing. You were laughing? I was laughing. You were laughing. He completely trips over his words, but Happy is already used to it. Everyone acts like this. William, sweating, manages to mumble a yes and adds that he understands a little more. While William digests the strange company of the happy guy, he thinks that having someone around with a half-cheerful smile helps keep the fear of death at bay. In the hallway, a guard appears bringing news. Family members can defend the innocent. Hope is reborn within William's body. If they prove his innocence, he gets out of prison. The happy guy hears the announcement. Anyone who can't prove their origin will be eliminated soon. The shouts of William's family are heard announcing the unexpected visit. Amid hugs and pleas for forgiveness, William reunites with his family and his little brother, who is a bit confused. His mother hugs him to comfort him. His father in turn gives him a strong hug. A moment filled with emotion hangs in the air. Behind the bus, the happy guy witnesses the scene. A gentle breath escapes his smiling lips. The contented face watches the scene with joy. In his thoughts, the happy guy murmurs with a heavy heart, and memories come flooding back to him. His childhood was lonely and weighs on him like ghostly hands. In his memory, a stern warning voice echoes. That's how everyone lives when they have no chance, right, William? That cold voice still echoes, saying they are slaves from the cradle, with their future already stamped, with no chance for change. The cheerful little face, so full of joy, barely murmurs father, but that inner smile of the adult is burning inside. But to give up now? No way, that would be my death sentence. William tries to distance himself from that heavy past. With a smile, he casts a shadow of contrasting pain. The guard orders the family to leave as he takes his place. The happy guy is left behind, watching the others' joy through blurred vision. He admits with a forced smile that he is still that fragile child from before. A harsh truth hits him hard. Unhealable is the change that awaits him. He's truly a weakling. His eyes sink into endless darkness, reflecting a soul broken by helplessness. And even in all that darkness, the happy guy mutters an okay, trying perhaps to convince himself of it. Then, a bit more determined, the happy guy has a plan in mind. The cheerful face grips the bars, his whole body marked. He speaks for himself. An officer watches William's family walking away, a cruel contrast to the fate of the others. The stone-faced officer gives orders to the guard. The innocents leave, the rest are headed for the gallows. But the guard interrupts him with some news. Captain, there's a special case among the condemned because Lord Lucasia, in his corruption, registered the fighter as a member of the church, and he's paying a fortune. The church law is clear about the place of execution, lifetime servitude as punishment, and the king has agreed. The captain with a scowling face grows curious and demands to know who this lucky person is. The guard reveals the crucial information. There's no name, just a fighter's nickname in the records. His smile shines as a vision of the name haunts him. He remembers Lucasia's words. This is my way of giving back for the joy he brought me. From the window, the captain wonders what kind of person the happy guy was to Lucasia, or did she just want to save him? A week later, fate reveals the truth amidst the trade of souls. A merchant looks at the new prisoner with contempt. Chained and facing away, is this the new slave? He seems crazy, laughing non-stop, and he says he's a salesman, while the other hesitates, not believing anyone will buy him. Just let this guy starve, one of them suggests. After all, the church sold this guy for next to nothing. An old man interrupts, saying he wants to buy that boy. All the merchants are left speechless, but the most confused one says, "There's no child here?" The old woman insists, pointing at the happy guy. That same child who's crying right over there. Her gaze reveals a child in tears. Behind the appearance of happiness, she sees it. At home, the news hits like a bomb. Grandma bought a slave. What a ridiculous idea. Her granddaughter can't believe it, but how could she and this stranger be alone together? Grandpa steps in right away, saying someone needs to help. After all, no one can handle this anymore. Trust me, trust those who know. The girl speaks with determination. Even though her grandfather defends it, she's resolute, stating that tomorrow she'll be home and she wants to see this signature put into practice. Then a new day dawns on the family farm. Here will be the perfect refuge for a smile. With affectionate gestures, the smiling grandmother offers a bath and clean clothes, a touch of dignity. But hold on a moment. After all, Soriso's stomach is also asking for its share. He's not just a smile, he needs food. The old woman, quite indignant, asks if the captor didn't bother to feed this boy at all. She pushes the boy toward the bath while she goes to prepare something for him to eat. She explains the rules to him and tells him to eat everything now because tomorrow he'd be the first to work to earn his bread. Got it? Then Soriso asks if tomorrow he'll have to fight. She asks if he's confusing work with the life he had before. The grandmother watches him and tells him not to say nonsense. In this house, the chores are quite simple. He'll wash the dishes, clean the room, and gather firewood for the winter. That sort of thing. As she finishes speaking, Soriso heads to the bathroom to take a nice bath. He throws all his dirty and torn clothes on the floor and walks toward the bathtub, remembering the cold showers he used to take in prison. But suddenly, he notices that the water is nice and warm, and as he puts his leg into the water, all those bloodstains start to come off his skin. He gets fully into the bathtub, his body still covered in scars and blood, and begins to wash himself. This is the first time Felix has ever experienced warm water in his life. It felt as if all his heavy pain was being washed away. Everything was warm. Afterwards, he puts on new clothes and helps prepare the food. He also sets the dinner table. After that, the old lady helps treat Felix's wounds. She couldn't believe how badly people had stabbed this young man. She applies some herbs to help his wounds heal quickly. But one thing about Felix intrigued her a lot. She asked him what it was and told him to call her grandma. Alright, then he agreed, and she asked what it was. He asked if he could leave. The two of them fell silent, and after he got dressed, he went outside and gazed at the vastness of the sky. He placed his hands as if simulating prison bars, the same bars through which he used to watch the sun when he was in prison. His mentor used to tell him that beyond those bars, the world was much bigger than he thought, that the sky and the earth stretched out infinitely. If he had freedom, he would understand what that meant. You can go anywhere you want. He looks back at the house of that old lady and at the same time looks forward into the vastness of the world, while the old lady was inside saying that if he wanted to leave, he could go. She was too old to stop him, but he didn't leave. All he feels now is that he is free. He approaches the old lady, saying that he has seen everything, and walks like a baby's first steps, remembering how he always called his master father. The master also had a special affection for Soriso, and he saw the same affection in the old lady. Smiling, he said he would start working immediately, so he gathered all the dirty dishes from the table, and the old lady thanked him with a toothless smile. Suddenly, the grandfather arrived, his back aching, and was startled by what he saw. Hadn't the old lady said she would be bringing a child? Well, that child is very big, but she kept insisting that he was a child. Ah, when William arrives early tomorrow morning, she's going to be very upset about the size of this child. Well, in any case, they're going to get along from now on. Happy Face looks to the side and sees his own face reflected in the house window. That day, he experienced the hottest day of his life, and that same night, our boy William is at his strongest. He's looking at the broken glass in his room, which is a complete mess. It's like he's in the middle of the chaos in his head, poor guy. And look, this is the coldest day of his life. In just 1 week, the guy's life has turned upside down. Damn, in the arena it's spread like gossip, and now the whole city thinks he's a criminal. It doesn't matter how much he shouts that he's innocent, no one believes him. Distrust is everywhere, and to make things worse, a stranger who was at the arena keeps following him around. The result of this hell? William lost awards, dreams, and even scholarships. He really got screwed, my friend. With the expulsion hearing approaching, the whole school turned its back on him. The face that was once full of hope now only shows the bitterness of someone who's completely alone. And then comes the saddest scene of all. His father kneels in front of someone, begging for mercy because of his son's failure. Man, that scene completely broke Willie. He grinds his teeth, feeling his soul being completely torn apart, and he just can't take it. His feet carry him far away from there. Desperate, he runs and knocks on the veteran's door, holding a pass and shouting that it was his fault, that he's never even seen a member of the royal family in his life. His face is all twisted with grief, the injustice burning inside him. The door opens, and on the other side there's only contempt. The hope of being heard dies right there. A cold voice says something and snatches the pass from his hand forcefully. That was it. Our boy's disbelief turns into pure hatred, and to top off this horror show, a bully starts laughing and mocking him, accusing him of trying to frame someone else. That was all it took. He lost his temper, grabbed the first heavy object he could find, and charged forward, determined to land a solid blow, a quick answer to the injustice he just swallowed. Immediately everyone holds him back, shouting that he's lost his mind. while the instigator shows up with a victorious smirk on his face, confirming that yes, he's expelled. William, restrained but not defeated, starts to say something, and then spits in the face of the bully, telling the scum to shut up as he's dragged away. As a result of all this, that very night, he's kicked out of his room with an uncertain fate and nowhere to go. The poor guy flees to the mountains, hiding so he can cry in peace and asking his parents for forgiveness, completely lost and not knowing what he's going to do with his life. And that's when our story gets a little stranger. Out of nowhere, a figure appears in the middle of the woods, holding a basket of mushrooms, and calmly asks if he's okay. William turns pale instantly, unable to believe what he's seeing. He starts to stutter and asks how the guy is there. Then he thought he had passed away. The guy just gives a little smile and says he was looking for a midnight snack, and then he offers William a piece of mushroom. Our hero, showing he has some common sense, immediately says that mushroom could be poisonous. The guy just sighs and says he almost kicked the bucket, which leaves William even more confused. Meanwhile, in the background, two figures are watching as William and Happy Face are laughing at all the nonsense. Now we see a group of people looking pretty suspicious, spying on everything. One of them confirms that he saw William leaving the noble school. Another one immediately concludes that the boy must be from a rich family, and they also recognize William's friend as the famous idiot of the village. Ah, the leader of the bandits. It's been a long time since they've seen such a golden opportunity. William, lost in his own gloom, even lets out a little laugh, wondering how on earth someone can be so chill like that. The guy's smile is contagious, and for a moment it eases the weight on our hero. He even jokes saying he thought he was done for after what happened, but now somehow things feel different. The guy with the radiant, innocent smile immediately changes the subject, as if he doesn't want to talk about the past. He asks William if he's okay now and why he was crying earlier. Our protagonist gets a distant look, wondering whether or not he should open up about what happened. But the light mood vanishes in an instant. The atmosphere grows tense, and a guy asks what a young noble like him is doing out in the dangerous woods. When the two turn around, they come face to face with a threat. The bandit leader and two giant shadows at his side. They were his henchmen, one of them holding a rusty axe. William tenses up immediately and manages to shout "Get down" to Happy Face, who is still confused beside him. Without thinking twice, our boy throws himself to the ground just to be safe, leaving the other one there, still not understanding anything, with his face in the dirt. William starts begging, trying to negotiate a few coins with the bandits. He pleads, for the love of God, for someone to help him. The scene is so ridiculous that the leader of the bandits can't hold back and starts laughing sarcastically, mocking how quickly the situation unfolded. But the charade ends there. The boss reveals the real plan. Their goal was never to get a measly sum. They're there to kidnap him and use his noble parents as bargaining chips. While the bandits start tying him up, William still tries to defend himself, shouting that he's not a noble, damn it, but it was already too late. A masked bandit approaches William's friend. The bandit asks what's inside his basket. Our boy's happy face disappears and is replaced by a sinister surprise, and with a power no one expected, he lands a precise blow that hits the masked bandit square in the face. The criminal simply blacks out and falls face first onto the grass, knocked out. The other bandits, axes in hand, just stand there staring, completely terrified. Meanwhile, William is still confused and shouts, "What's going on?" One of the henchmen, in the middle of the fight that started out of nowhere, asks what he did, but the only answer he gets is a strange twisted smile that appears on the boy's face, a smile that's almost predatory. The other furious bandit confronts him, yelling, "What did you do, kid?" But the boy's hand flies out and shuts him up with another brutal blow. Two scoundrels are on the ground, and the bandit leader, along with what's left of his crew, looks at that scene thinking, what kind of idiot is this? The boy, whom we'll call Felice, stares them down with a defiant look and a chilling smile. The desperate leader yells for everyone to attack all at once. He himself throws himself forward like a weapon, but Felice, with unbelievable agility, dodges and lands a precise kick to the boss's face. While the boss writhes in pain, another bandit tries a sneaky attack from behind, axe in hand, but Felice, with a bizarre calmness, simply ducks and dodges the deadly blow with surgical precision. He gives them a look as if inviting them to a fight and takes down the next opponent, who falls as if struck by lightning. It's a pure massacre in the scene. The leader is paralyzed and can only watch as Phyllis takes out all the bandits one by one with an unbelievable smile on his face. The last one left is on the ground, begging for his life. William, on the other hand, is frozen, only able to stare at his friend's radiant smile that makes him forget all the madness. That's when the truth comes out. This guy wasn't just anyone, he was the former arena champion. The remaining bandits panic and run away as if they've seen a ghost. Phyllis, bleeding but with a terrifyingly triumphant smile, turns to William, who remains in shock, the poor guy wondering how the hell he's going to deal with this. A memory of a familiar face flashes in his mind. It was Fearless, a true wild warrior who did everything with his fists. Then William finds a wanted poster in the middle of the mess, and guess what? Phyllis's face is plastered there along with 4 others. It was an entire criminal organization, the most feared in the kingdom, so powerful that the king himself put a bounty on their heads. William, trying to hide his surprise, starts connecting the dots. Phyllis, with that ever-curious look, asks, "So William, what's up?" Wow, a golden opportunity, my friends, falls right into William's lap. He gets an idea. If they capture the criminals from the poster, they can claim the reward money. He already has that sly grin of someone about to split the profits. The scene then shifts to some time later, with William brazenly going up to an officer to collect the reward. The officer, looking none too friendly, says that being friends with criminals doesn't change anything, but our boy, persistent as ever, manages to convince the guy to register the reward in his name. And wouldn't you know it, it works. Later, William shows up with a heavy bag full of money. No more hunting for mushrooms, no, it's real food. He thanks Phyllis, whose face lights up with joy, pure innocence. He doesn't even know how to use the money. William laughs and promises to teach him everything next time under the stars. They say their goodbyes, promising to see each other soon, but as soon as he walks away, William's smile fades and a cloud of worry settles over him, his eyes feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. This friendship was not going to be easy at all. Then the next morning, my friends, fate comes knocking at the door. It's the day of the verdict about William's expulsion from the academy because of the other fight. His parents are tense at his side, and an official gets ready to deliver the news. William, head down, is already expecting the worst. Poor guy. But then the story takes a dramatic twist. The official says that for having stood up to the criminals, William will not be expelled. Instead, he will receive a Medal of Honor. Our hero stands there holding a medal in his hand, more lost than a blind man in a shootout. His parents in the back, with the same look as if they'd seen a ghost, have absolutely no idea what just happened. Near him, there are two guys, one of them all bandaged up, poor thing, and the other with the same look as someone who just saw a ghost. The atmosphere is heavy, like the calm before a storm. You can already tell that some major gossip is about to go down. Then one of the guys can't hold it in anymore and breaks the silence, asking what the hell is going on. Then the king's official shows up, all prim and proper, takes charge of the situation and says he has a message straight from the Boston King himself. The whole crowd goes silent, just waiting for the bomb to drop. The guy starts saying that by royal decree someone's sins have been completely forgiven. Not only that, but this person's courage shone through the darkness. Basically, the king is blatantly turning a criminal into a hero. Our hero William hears all of this and almost has a fit right then and there. Poor guy's hand starts to shake and he keeps wondering what kind of joke this is. He just can't believe the king made such a crazy and senseless decision. In his head, it's a mix of "what do you mean? But this has got to be a joke, right?" He's completely outraged, thinking that all his sacrifice was for nothing. He keeps brooding that his parents are definitely behind this nonsense, probably involving a lot of money to elevate a commoner to hero status. In a fit of rage, the knight rips off his own blindfold, showing that any plan to eliminate the other guy had gone down the drain. The scene cuts to a flashback from the previous night so we can understand what was going on with this happy guy and our bandaged boy. The poor guy spent the whole night wide awake, feeling a bizarre pain that just wouldn't go away. It felt like 1,000 needles were dancing inside him, a true show of internal torture that wouldn't let him rest at all. In all his innocence, he even wonders if it was just hunger. But obviously, life isn't that simple. Out of nowhere, an answer comes to him, and he realizes the mess he got into with the thugs. It was that mess that triggered his true power. The adrenaline from the fight was just what he needed to switch on turbo mode. A huge grin spreads across his face. Problem solved, at least in his mind. Right back to the present, the scene shifts to a super peaceful farm. The little boy with dark curls comes running in, all excited, shouting that he's back to see Grandma. Right after, a young blonde woman appears and gives the old lady a big hug. This is Winry. An older man, the grandfather, watches the scene and asks if the little one is already back. The young woman picks up a wooden bird she was going to give as a gift, but the moment the happy face walks in with that smile, and let's say those rather peculiar teeth, she's so shocked that she drops the present on the floor. That's when the truth comes out. The boy starts to say that he's happy, not as a feeling but as a name. His name is Happy. Henry figures it all out instantly. That little boy is actually the one who caused all that chaos in the city. Her head must be spinning right now. The scene cuts to Winry, overwhelmed by panic, talking to her grandfather. She says she heard that the boy isn't anyone's grandson, and that he came from the arena. Her grandfather, calm as ever, tells her to take a look, saying the boy really does seem like a good person. Looking through the window, he even comments that it's nice to see Grandma smiling like that, and that the boy looks absolutely beaming with happiness. Happy comes in carrying a heavy barrel, as if it were light as a feather, asking Grandpa where he should put it. Grandpa gets all emotional, commenting that thanks to the new helper he'll finally be able to organize the storage room. The next day, the sky is bright blue and the farm work goes on. There's Winry chopping wood with an axe, grumbling that it would be easier without a useless helper around. The girl's pride is hurt, poor thing, but she's still determined. Even sweating and tired, she keeps working hard, going at the log with all she's got. Then Happy shows up, carrying 2 buckets of water as if it's the easiest thing in the world. Still smiling, he lets her know that her bath water is already ready. Winry, full of pride, tells him to take a break, that she'll handle the firewood herself. Of course, our boy refuses right away. He throws himself onto the grass and says, "Alright, happiness, I'll just stay here watching." Winry, a bit confused, asks why he keeps staring at her and smiling. Happy, bold as ever, replies that today's job is just to watch and learn how her technique works. The granddaughter actually thinks that's pretty cool of him, and to impress him she grabs the axe with all her strength and splits a log with a single blow. Splinters fly everywhere, and one of them almost hits our friend Happy. The poor apprentice just stands there, eyes wide open, thinking about what just happened. Winry, out of breath, feels victorious. Happy, fascinated, comments on how amazing that strike was. The girl is all happy. The poor thing keeps walking while Happy and her grandfather applaud as if they were at a show. Suddenly, the grandmother arrives and puts a stop to it, telling Winry to stop. She asks why, and the grandmother says they don't need any more firewood because Happy already chopped an entire mountain's worth last night. Winry is left in shock, staring at the pile of logs and then looking at Happy, all embarrassed. Cool thing, she asks why he said he was just going to watch and learn, but Happy, with that mischievous grin, admits that he worked so much the day before that his shoulders were sore, and he just wanted to see her technique and understand how it worked. Winry gets furious and starts yelling at him because she did all that work for nothing, the poor thing, while Happy is just there laughing at her. Sometime later, the scene shifts to Winry relaxing in a bathtub. For a moment, she thinks the house even feels cozier with Happy's arrival. Now that she's dry and refreshed, she looks out the window and sees a strange scene. Happy is leaving with the baskets on his back just as the sun is setting. She furrows her brow and gets a little worried, wondering where that crazy guy is going to wander off to in the dark. To wrap things up, she goes to look for her grandparents. The scene cuts to her grandfather, who's caught off guard and gets a real fright, ending up with an expression that looks just like Winnie the Pooh ready to look for his honeypot, and in his head 1,000 theories start popping up, thinking Happy must be getting himself into big trouble. Out of nowhere, we see Happy in a mysterious place, and he's holding a bag that starts jingling. It's already clear that our boy's nighttime activities, they are pretty profitable. The determined look, he goes up and knocks hard on an unknown door. What the hell is this kid up to? My friends, the door opens a little, and through a crack we see a small silhouette. She peeks out with that fearless curiosity only kids have. It's a little girl who looks at him with innocent eyes and asks who he is. At that moment, an older boy suddenly appears, pulls the girl away as if trying to protect her, and says he needs to step out for a bit. The girl's eyes quickly fill with tears as she asks where her brother is going. The young man, with a mischievous grin, blatantly lies and says he's going to the library. It seems like that's some kind of secret code for them to go out and fight at night. The girl waves goodbye, and off her brother goes. Then the scene cuts back to William. Our grumpy knight is out on the street and lets out a goofy smile when he sees Happy. He asks if everything's good for them to head out, and Happy gives the all clear, saying William helped a ton and everything's chill. He says he'll explain everything on the way and suggests stopping by the market, but Happy already has other plans. Our big guy holds up a yellowed poster of the Iron Giant. That's right, his plan is to hunt down that monster. William's eyes go wide instantly, and he's frozen in fear. Poor guy. The skittish cat is left wondering what kind of crazy idea Happy has this time. Happy holds up the poster and bluntly says he wants to take on guys the size of a giant. Out of nowhere, a bounty hunter shows up with a sly grin and suggests splitting the profits. My friends, what a pal, huh? William, on one hand, is grateful to Happy, but on the other he's completely baffled. He already understands that his friend needs these fights like medicine for those strange pains he feels, and let's be honest, it's a great excuse to get into a brawl. And so the two brave souls head out into the night. Meanwhile, back at Will's house, paranoia is running wild. His father, all worried, asks if his son is going to the library again. Little Ellen breaks down crying again, complaining that her brother doesn't play with her anymore, and only wants to go out at night. The parents feel like something is wrong going on there. At the same time, William, as curious as ever, decides to investigate Happy's room, and that's when he finds a bag full of coins. The blonde refuses to believe it and keeps wondering, what kind of immoral thing is this guy doing every night to get all that money? The scene then shifts again to a secret cave where we see the source of all that cash. That's right, 2 treasure chests, my friends, and the one guarding it all is none other than the Iron Giant, a colossal armored warrior who looks like a living legend. The floor is littered with the shattered armor of other guards who tried their luck and got wrecked. The giant lets out a laugh and grumbles that rewards only attract pests and troublemakers. So back to our hero, proclaimed by the king, William, who is pale, looking like a ghost, staring at the poster of the giant. Happy, on the other hand, is ecstatic and shouts in front of the Colossus as if he just won the lottery. William's face is a picture of pure despair. Poor guy. He looks at the giant's weapon and at the fallen warriors and realizes things are about to get serious. The big guy looks at them with disdain and tells them to stop bringing in rookies since they're just a bunch of exiles. William is sweating bullets. Poor guy. He starts stammering, trying to think of an excuse to get out of there. But Happy, seeing how radiant his friend is, ignores any kind of retreat plan. He simply leaps through the air and lands a flying kick right on the giant's shield. The metal colossus is surprised and with the greatest irony in the world, and in the situation, says that Happy's knee must be hurting a lot. Happy limps a little but still has a mischievous grin on his face. William panics that they need to get out of there fast, but Happy is loving the challenge. The big guy warns that there's no turning back now and charges forward. Happy tries to dodge like a dancer, but his opponent's strength is terrifying. The punch lands squarely on our boy, sending him to the ground. He barely gets up before taking another hit. William is frozen in despair, watching his friend get beaten like that. Poor Happy is lying there on the ground, and the giant is getting ready to finish him off. And that's when something changes in William. He yells at the guy to stop and throws himself in front to protect his friend. At that moment, he has a flashback and remembers when he was just a kid who blindly believed in Happy's victories. That's why he went back to studying the fights, to help. But now he realizes he made a terrible mistake. He starts to cry as he apologizes, saying he just wanted to watch battles, not push his friend toward death. While poor William is having his dramatic moment, the giant raises his weapon to deliver the final blow, but at the last second, Happy gets up with a smile on his face, pulls William out of danger and lets him go. He asks if it was him. Was it that kid who entered his arena for the first time, right? And then comes the best part of all. Happy reveals that it was all just a big act. With a massive full kick, he pulls off a super agile move and dodges the giant, who is left thinking, what the hell just happened here? The scene takes us to a distant memory where everything becomes clear. Happy explains that ever since he was a child, he was a kind of child actor in the fighting arenas. When the fights ended too quickly, the business was unprofitable, so he would pretend to be hurt, taunt his opponents and fake disadvantages to put on a thrilling show. He even pretends to limp and flashes a completely crazy smile. It's pure showmanship, and it manages to keep everyone glued to the action. Out of nowhere, he drops the giant's weapon as if it were a helium balloon and pretends he's lost interest in the fight. A classic trap, right? The weapon crushes down on the giant's chest, making him look like a pitiful loser. He just stands there with a perplexed expression, as if he's trying to figure out what happened. But then, with a mischievous grin, he winks at the giant, and it's at that moment that he reveals to the metal colossus that it was all just a brilliant act. The guy who was already on his knees seems to get hit with a dose of reality and can't believe what's happening. Then our boy drops the bomb. He explains that he never fought because he liked it, but because he had to. Then we see a quick flashback showing that he spent his whole life fighting to escape the clutches of a wretched master, and that's why he fights with such determination. Even outside the arena, he proclaims with renewed energy that the fight begins. Happy swings his weapon in a fury that's contagious. The giant responds with a brutal attack, pressing his shield against him, but our boy is incredibly agile and dodges the blow. The ground shakes from the impact, and he escapes by a hair's breadth with a bold grin on his face. The giant warns that he won't be scratched that easily. As for Happy, we now see him gliding across the battlefield like a shadow. He dodges the Colossus's blows with an impressive lightness. The guy in that massive, incredibly heavy armor misses again and falls awkwardly to the ground. Meanwhile, Happy stands firm with a defiant smile on his face. The Iron Colossus snorts in frustration, completely stunned by his opponent's agility. He keeps wondering where that almost supernatural energy comes from, since the kid looked like he was about to collapse just seconds ago. The tension in that cave is palpable, and our boy is smiling. His smile is so big it could light up an entire city, but his eyes instantly send out a warning. The Colossus charges in like a hurricane, wanting to settle everything at once, but Happy glides across the field with unbelievable speed. His feet barely touch the ground. He uses the giant himself as a shield, and like a magic trick, he takes the force of the giant's attack and returns it with interest, and then some. The armored warrior is mercilessly shoved straight into his own shield, which he had planted in the ground. Even so, the stubborn guy still headbutts the metal and manages to smile, thinking that wouldn't stop him, but Happy lets his fury explode. He lands a direct blow on the giant just as the poor guy tries to get up. The hit is unavoidable, but the assault doesn't stop. A flying kick from Happy lands without a shred of mercy. With a swift move, our hero grabs the giant by the helmet and smashes the Colossus's head into the ground with a masterful stomp, planting himself firmly on the back of the already defeated giant. The poor guy screams in pain and agony. Defeat is inevitable, my friend, and the creature's suffering is obvious, but he makes it clear that the fight is far from over. With his foot on his opponent like a king on his throne, he watches the giant struggle to breathe. The creature's breathing is a disjointed symphony. Happy, with a devilish mocking grin, says, "Wow, looks like you took quite a beating, huh?" The giant's eyes are still in disbelief. Exhausted, he tries to gather what strength he has left, raising his massive shield against Happy both at their limit. The guy plants his shield in the ground, establishing his final line of defense. Meanwhile, Happy seeks out the only weakness he knows: happiness. He glances at the hidden observer, William, and calls out to him, urging him to believe in him in a bold move to win his friend's trust. William, in turn, just wants to make sure his friend stays safe and is shocked by Happy's words. Back in the action, Happy moves forward, grabs a broken piece and throws it on the ground while the giant just watches, thinking, what the hell is this lunatic up to? Now Happy grips the improvised weapon, a fierce look of battle in his eyes. The Colossus laughs and asks if he really plans to fight with that, since no weapon had ever managed to pierce his armor before. But then comes the unexpected outburst. The tip of the spear shoots out from Happy's leap. Absolute terror fills the giant's only visible eye. Happy dominates the Titan with unbelievable precision. His scream echoes, and our hero's eyes shine with an insatiable thirst. He warns, if you move again, the pain will get worse. The giant struggles with the last of his strength, and Happy tightens his grip on the Colossus as he grinds his teeth. The monster's will to fight vanishes instantly, faced with a strength that doesn't seem of this world. Happy lifts the giant as if he were a feather and slams him to the ground with a tremendous thud. The scene cuts to William, who's in a total state of shock. He just witnessed the true power of happiness, something that defies all logic. Sweat drips down his forehead, and Happy, extremely calm and smiling, turns to William and observes his friend's panicked face. He finally says that the guy isn't dead. He just passed out from the intensity of the blow. For him, that was nothing more than a dramatic pose. Happy, completely calm, looking at the guy lying on the ground, says that the fight was kind of boring, that there was no real competitor for him there. It was like a walk in the park. He also remembers that his old teacher used to hate pointless fights like this one. Meanwhile, our boy William is there, jaw dropped, thinking the battle was amazing and that, on top of it all, they managed to catch a tough criminal. He starts shouting, full of adrenaline, saying that now he trusts Happy blindly. But when he asks Happy what they're going to do next, ready to get out of there, poor Happy just collapses onto the grass. He says he hasn't slept in days and that he's going to take a nap right there in the middle of the chaos. He even says that he was sleepy during the fight and just asks William to clean up all that mess. Poor William is left paralyzed, staring at the guy sleeping as if nothing had happened. His mind turns into a roller coaster. He wonders if it wouldn't be better to just drop everything and go to sleep. He thinks about filing a report, but suddenly his mind freezes, and then like a flash, he remembers a detail from the fight on the ground. He finds a blood-soaked dagger that was Happy's real secret weapon. And yeah, this is way more sinister than he imagined. With a trembling hand, he picks up the dagger, wondering if the spear was just a decoy. How the hell did Happy attack the giant? Now he's scared, so he approaches the huge body lying on the ground, looking for the spear. Maybe it was still stuck there. He tries to pull the body, but the thing is heavy. He keeps trying, getting really out of breath, and wonders how on earth Happy managed to do that alone. Completely drained and exhausted, he decides that's enough and it's time to call for reinforcements. Speaking of reinforcements, out of nowhere, a group of soldiers emerges from the forest, torches in hand, drawn by all the commotion, a squad armed to the teeth. The leader of the group, a guy with a seriously tough look, steps forward and his eyes go straight to the giant's body on the ground, then to the open wound and of course to the bloody dagger in William's hand. The situation suddenly gets really tense. Then, one of the soldiers, clearly relieved, shouts that they managed to catch the enemy. William just blinks, not understanding anything. A soldier starts to explain that he managed to escape and saw William with a wanted poster. He starts putting the pieces together, wondering if the boy is a bounty hunter. The captain, curious, wants to know who this kid is, and the soldiers are terrified, shocked, when they realize it's William, the same student who took down the famous group of clowns. Everyone exchanges glances, like how is that even possible? A student with a broken spear defeated a guy like that? Ah, he deserves applause. Our hero, still a bit dazed, asks about these rumors, and the leader confirms that the story about him joining the Order of Knights is true. A legend about him as a student bounty hunter is spreading like wildfire. The kid can hardly believe his own luck. The captain, fully in control of the situation, tells William to leave the rest to them and orders everyone to get him out of the forest. Meanwhile, Happy is still there, fast asleep without a care in the world. The captain looks at the sleeping guy and says that a transporter also got involved in the fight. One of the subordinates asks the boss to take a look, saying this guy is kind of weird. The captain examines the spear wound on the giant and notices it's not that serious. Then he looks at the broken weapons on the ground and wonders what kind of cursed weapon could have caused all that damage. We see Happy's hand covered in a thick, coagulated black substance. Sometime later, we see William carrying Happy on his back. The captain doesn't miss the chance to tease, saying the doorman looks all beat up. William just smiles and says he's just taking a nap with the dagger in his hand. The captain keeps thinking about this student who faced all that trouble head on. He knows there's a lot of weird stuff in this story. The scene then shifts to a very dark place. We see some men kneeling, and a sinister-looking man approaches. This is the leader of the bandits, all beaten up, his face pressed to the ground, the very picture of defeat. The other leader, with cold eyes, comes closer to him and reminds the poor guy of the promise they made that they would never hide again. But the weight of the past and the humiliation of their recent defeat are too much. The man standing asks how he let himself be beaten by a mere child. The poor guy starts crying and can only manage to apologize. The lesson was harsh. The guy gets up, grabs a knife, and swears he's going to change his story. They're not just any criminals, they're a bunch of exiled clowns. Back at the villain's base, a woman with an icy stare asks if they've already found out who this so-called student is. The little Crimson says his name is William and that he's a weekend bounty hunter. So the order is clear. The next mission is to catch this William guy. The scene shifts again. Now we're with an elegant nobleman sipping tea and asking which family this student belongs to. His son, a young nobleman all upset, breaks down and accuses William of tarnishing the family's reputation. The father, with a calmness that's almost frightening, listens to everything and then pulls out a mysterious scroll that seems to be a family secret. Basically, this guy has a group of mercenaries for dirty jobs. Then he orders his son to send everyone to check out William. Meanwhile, in a sunny village, a girl with a basket of apples starts to panic on the ground among the bodies. All we see is a scene of total destruction. Two men, an old man and a young man named Sagaru, observe the scene. They were found in the morning, and Sagaru, upset, asks why no autopsy was done, thinking the case was closed too quickly. The old man starts to speak, worried as he says Sagaru's name, reminding him that the boy's impulsiveness almost got them thrown in jail before, and that those were just defeated clowns and no one will miss those guys. But as Sagaru walks away, he just can't let it go. Something is bothering him. He looks again and notices signs of violence on the bodies and injuries that happened before death. Then it hits him. The marks are the same as those on the bodies he saw in the arena. So, the connection forms in his mind. Suddenly, to break the heavy mood, a lively young woman named Winnie appears with a bag of herbs. She greets the old man, who thanks her and jokes about her grandfather's health. Meanwhile, Sagaru watches from a distance. Winnie turns around, senses his gaze, and flashes a radiant smile greeting him. Our boy Sagaru, still lost in his dark thoughts, just returns the greeting quickly. Winnie, with a mischievous smile, offers him some herbs and he looks surprised. Curious, she asks if he's not into that kind of thing. She tries to break the ice with the question. Sagaru thanks Winnie for the medicinal herbs and she, all cute, gives that little smile that looks like it could solve even a credit card bill. But obviously the old man had to butt into the conversation. He comes over saying that Winnie is adorable but that she's being silly for giving away herbs for free. Winnie, without losing her composure, replies that Sagaru helps her a lot and that she also needs to take care of him. She's absolutely right, isn't she? The old man even admits that Sagaru does a good job but immediately follows up with a complaint, like a typical annoying boss. He blurts out that the boy isn't very smart and is always disappearing at night, which makes everyone suspicious. The old man, who isn't fooled easily, notices right away and also gets intrigued by her seriousness. So, he asks what's going on when he gets a bit nervous and starts to open up, saying she's dealing with a similar problem at home. The old man immediately gets worried, asking if she also has a slave involved in the situation. That's when she tells the whole story. Her guy also disappears at night and comes back with money from a suspicious source, hiding everything. To make matters worse, his shady past is as a fighter in the arena. That past doesn't help at all. The poor thing is in a panic, her eyes already shining with fear, wondering if this guy is also mixed up in some serious trouble. That's when Sagaru comes into the picture. He explains that the city's only arena simply vanished from the map and all the fighters were either eliminated or disappeared like smoke. Winnie gets confused, insisting that's not the case. She's sure the guy was an arena fighter because she saw it herself. Sagaru is very patient and explains that those fighters were actually inmates and criminals, and that if any of them survived, it was only because they had the protection of a very powerful patron, someone even a king couldn't command. Wow, can you feel how influential this guy is? Now Sagaru asks Winnie to bring the guy's documents so he can take a look, just to be sure. She feels like her soul is about to leap out of her throat, but she agrees and grabs the papers at night to hand them over to him the next day. She leaves feeling relieved but also terrified, and the old man gives Sagaru one last warning. If he keeps sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, he's gonna end up in trouble. Our hero, herbs in hand, grows all melancholy, wishing there were more good people in the world. The scene cuts abruptly to the dark night, and our hero Sagaru is there running, carrying an unconscious boy in his arms. His hand is covered in blood, but when he looks at the boy, he realizes the boy is happy. The poor kid is so worn out, he can barely let out a whimper. The boy has spent so many nights awake, and now he can finally sleep in peace. He arrives at a humble house in the countryside, knocks on the door, and it's Winnie who answers. She walks into the living room, finds her grandparents there, and the atmosphere turns completely heavy. Her eyes land on a piece of paper on the table, a slave ownership certificate in her grandmother's name. She takes a step back just as she notices the boy's wounded hand that Sagaru brought. Sagaru realizes the girl is starting to panic and tries to calm her down, saying the boy is just sleeping and that she shouldn't misinterpret the scene with everyone watching them. Sagaru gets ready to tell the truth no one wanted to hear. And that's how the boy's story began. While the boy sleeps, Sagaru starts to recount the toughest ordeal of his life as if it were a dark fairy tale. He narrates that the boy named Happy was always smiling, but it was just a facade. He has spent his whole life in arena battles, and behind that smile, he suffered from a bizarre nerve condition in his face that caused excruciating pain. The need to survive made him fight non-stop, even when he was paralyzed by pain. Sagaru recounts every detail of poor Rep's journey. The grandmother weeps uncontrollably, when Rick can't hold back his tears either, and the grandfather just sits there, his gaze lost, trying to process the cruelty of it all. In the end, he reveals that Rep was the hero who saved his life. After dropping this bombshell, he steps away, leaving the family to process everything. After all that damn slave ownership certificate is thrown into the fireplace and turns to ashes. Then a new day dawns, and Rep wakes up in bed. He's confused but smiling with those huge bright eyes. Winry approaches him and with all the tenderness in the world, asks why he never talked about the pain he felt, the pain he hid behind his smiles. Rep, with that puppy dog face, doesn't understand a thing. She explains that they could have avoided a lot of misunderstandings, but Rep, thinking with the logic of the arena, replies that if he slipped up or showed weakness, he'd be out on the street, simple as that. Winry calls him silly and says with all the firmness in the world, that with them he's not just any slave, but family. Grandma already considers him as if he were her own grandson. She promises that she's going to heal him and that the fighting is over, because she didn't become an ableist for nothing. The guy lights up with happiness, his eyes shining, and he holds her hand in a gesture that says more than 1,000 words. Suddenly he bursts with joy, remembering something. He says he bought a little something with the first money he earned. At that moment, Grandma comes in with a bag and says that this is Rep's reward. The boy Beeman says he won't fight anymore because Winry is going to heal him. Grandpa, crying, hugs the boy and shouts, "Our grandson, our luck." There's so much emotion that the old man almost does a somersault. Grandma peers at the door with a huge smile, seeing Rep. Winry observes everything and finally understands. She thinks that now she understands why Grandma calls him a happy little bear. The boy always carried a teddy bear everywhere. With a sparkle in his eyes, Rep shows the rings he bought. Winry gets all shy. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Sagaru receives a note from Winry saying that he doesn't need to investigate anything anymore, because she already knows the whole truth. Soon after that, William Guy, the powerful godfather, approaches him and invites him for a snack in a cheap attempt to apologize. Sagaru cuts the guy off right away, saying there's nothing between them anymore. William puts on a huge scene, as everyone already knows, and drops to his knees begging for one more chance, saying he's thought a lot about the real show. Sagaru is a bit stunned by the drama but agrees to talk, turning down the food as they walk away. Sagato quietly says thank you, but inside, our boy is just thinking what a pathetic little act. The scene finally shows William wiping away his crocodile tears while thinking with contempt, "Damn bastard." William, as shameless as ever, keeps insisting on an apology. He swears that this time he really means it, but our boy Sagaru, poor thing, isn't buying this story at all. It came right out of nowhere, a totally treacherous move, a violent shove to the poor guy, and he goes flying with no chance to react. He crashes hard into a wall, testing the toughness of the concrete, courtesy of his loyal friend. His world starts spinning because this betrayal was a low blow he just didn't see coming. The scene changes, and some guys, not friendly at all, grab Sagaru as if he were a sack of potatoes, and he is dragged off without the slightest bit of ceremony, demanding to know who these bad guys are and where they're taking him. Meanwhile, he watches everything from a distance like the conductor of an evil orchestra. They throw our boy into a dump that can barely be called a room, with his face all beaten up. Sagaru faces William and asks what kind of joke this is, what game he's playing. Before William can answer, one of his goons is already getting ready to teach him a lesson he won't forget anytime soon. The fist flies straight into action because diplomacy was clearly not invited to this party. Our boy is already on the ground, realizing that things have really gotten ugly, lying there with his hand all bloody on the floor. Our hero is feeling the pain from the punches, but inside the betrayal hurts even more. Then William, with a look full of venom, confesses that he's always hated Sagaru. The poor guy, not understanding anything, asks what he did. Sagaru can't believe it and asks again what more he wants, since he's already blamed everything on him. Again, with no mercy at all, William starts taking out all his frustration on Sagaru. With a mocking look, he asks if our boy really thought that being the most studious in the class would save him from anything. Getting closer, he tells it like it is. Without power and without pedigree, you're nobody, with a wicked smile. He even asked if Sagaru didn't know that everyone at school hates him because nobody likes a stuck-up pauper who tries to stand out. Then, William assures him that everyone will be happy about his disappearance and calls him a pathetic bastard. To top it all off, he gets ready and spits on Sagaru before leaving. He throws out one last line. "In your next life, learn to beg before you learn to write." What a scumbag. Man, that's insane. William then leaves and orders his henchmen to take care of Sagaru. The heavy door closes, sealing the poor boy's fate. The scene cuts to William outside, and now we see that he's holding a whip. This reveals the bastard's true sadistic nature. He whispers that this is just the beginning, fully convinced that his power and authority justify any atrocity. But hold on. Meanwhile, up above, a mysterious figure watches as William walks away. The observer wonders whether William just ordered the guy to get a beating, or if his plan is much worse. Man, the guy is disgusted. The stranger thinks about how the schemes of the rich are always cruel. But today he seems to have a slightly different kind of determination, thinking that maybe today is the day to hunt down some mercenaries with daggers in hand. This unexpected savior gets ready to intervene. With the agility of a shadow, the enigmatic protector moves toward the hideout, but as he gets closer, he notices something really strange. It looks like someone else is already ahead of him. Who the hell managed to get into the lion's den so quickly? The scene then shifts to the little room, and things are getting even crazier. The guy turns to our hero and whispers that the boss's promise was to make him suffer for a long time. Poor Sagaru, completely worn out, can only think about the irony of his life. So much effort, so much dedication, only to end up being treated like a disposable piece. Poor guy. Frustrated, wounded, and betrayed, he gathers up that mess of feelings that turns into hatred and anger inside him and wonders if this is the price for defying a noble's whim. Out of nowhere, a woman appears in the middle of the room, grabs Sagaru by the hair and leaves the henchmen stunned. They start wondering who this crazy woman is and how she just barged in like it was nothing. The stranger slaps Sagaru across the face. To snap him out of his trance, she immediately turns to William. She looks over the whole scene and says she had been tracking the two guys and that her theory about who was to blame seems to have been wrong. With Sagaru now more alert, she questions him directly about who the other guy was. One of the henchmen is already fed up with the interruption and raises his sword to silence the intruder, threatening that her end will be quick if she doesn't get out of there. Bad idea. In the blink of an eye, the woman takes down the henchman with incredible speed, leaving Sagaru speechless. Like a true whirlwind, she dispatches the other two henchmen with little skill. Our boy, still on the ground, watches in disbelief as his executioners fall one by one. With a slight smile, the woman says they were adorable and regrets not being able to take them on a leash. Suddenly, her expression changes completely, and she seems to have noticed something outside, a hooded vigilante who was spying. He sees that she noticed something and decides that the situation has already gone beyond his limit. He wonders if she is the leader of some group and concludes that it's best to get out of there now that things have calmed down. The woman turns against Sagaru and tells him to get back to talking about William. Impatient, she puts the blade to his neck and demands to know who was with William. Her warning is cold and direct. One mistake and the conversation is over for good. Meanwhile, the scene shifts completely to our boy, who remembers with gratitude how William protected him. The boy thinks that William is the only friend he's ever had and fears for his safety. Back at the interrogation, completely broken, frustrated, betrayed, shattered, every emotion imaginable, he can only whisper an apology to Happy Face. Through sobs, he reveals the identity of William's partner, Happy Face, a slave from the combat arena who now lives on a quiet farm with an elderly couple. The scene finally cuts back to our boy Happy Face, who ignores the storm brewing as he plans to visit William to tell him he's going to give up being a bounty hunter. He's even made a gift for his friend, a straw doll, a bizarre symbol of a devotion that's sure to end very badly. The woman gets closer to his face and says that he's such a weakling he's not even worth killing. If she'd known he was so irrelevant, there would have been no need to kill his family, and he's shocked by the statement. What does she mean by that? She says, "Oh, you don't know? When we take revenge, we wipe out the entire bloodline." She only stayed there as a precaution, but the boss would definitely arrive at his house soon. Meanwhile, at his family's house, someone knocks on the door. As she gets ready to meet the happy guy, our boy shouts, "No!" and begs her to wait, but she keeps going out. While he tries to yell no, he remembers the conversation with Felice. He seemed like a good person. Even from just listening briefly, he could feel that Felice genuinely cared about him. He recalls Felix thinking he was really going to die, but he was smiling. He remembers Felix saying that family saved his life. He also remembers his own parents, the family that always protected him. He clenches his fists, starts to cry, and breaks down in tears as he says, it was all because of him. If he had been a little stronger, it could have ended with only his own death. In other words, if he hadn't given in during the interrogation, only he would have died, and he is completely consumed by regret. If he hadn't been influenced from the start, none of this would have happened. He remembers the swindler insisting that he go to the arena. In the end, he survived pathetically all alone like this and couldn't protect anything. Closing his eyes, lowering his head and turning away, that's why he couldn't protect them. Friends, family, everyone. As he cries, we notice there's a sword nearby. He tries to find the strength to get up and rises from the ground, believing it's not too late to change his fate. If he needs to change even just a little to protect them, he's willing. He grabs the sword and says he's going to change the entire fate of his family and also his friends. But the guy can't even stand up straight. Outside, the other guy is wondering when this will end and why they left the door open. What if someone comes in? Suddenly, he notices William, covered in blood, with a psychopathic look on his face. He looks down and sees several bodies, and William, bloodied, holding a knife. He gets startled, even trips on the stairs and falls to the ground, but his gaze remains fixed. Our boy approaches while the other begs for forgiveness and pleads for his life. Yeah, it seems this guy is more skilled than he thought. Unfortunately, now there are only two options left, either beg or die. While begging for his life, he even licks our hero's feet, but inside all he can think is that now he's really screwed. Our boy tells him to get out of there quickly, and the guy can't believe he actually made it out of this situation alive. Then suddenly his father appears. He was just there to see how he was handling the situation. Our hero steps a little closer and says that if he keeps blocking the way, he'll end up in a grave. The nobleman is frightened by the boy's gaze and just looks down, deciding not to block the way. The swindler can't believe his father isn't going to do anything, while William thinks that no matter how much he tries to prove himself, he hates this reality where the people who always despise and ignore him lower their heads so easily in front of a single shot. He wanted to witness this scene while holding a pen, not a sword. But in this damned world he realizes that he must wield a sword so that his voice can reach places a pen cannot easily reach. He should have taken up not only the pen but also the sword. As he walks, he thinks that the path to becoming a savior is not the same path that leads to death. A little further away at his house, his parents answered the door, asking who it is, and there he is, Happy Face. He was there just to see William. The parents invited him in to eat while they talked about the story of William being a bounty hunter. Well, his mother never believed in those things, and his father also stayed quiet, but he knew that someone was helping behind the scenes, and it was none other than Happy Face. The little girl doesn't like that boy because he doesn't play with her anymore and only plays with this Happy guy. Happy says he will stop bounty hunting from now on, and she asks if he's serious about that. In that case, maybe she can reconsider her brother. The mother sits down praising Happy's decision. After all, bounty hunting among students is extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, the father says that anyone can see he's from a noble family, excelling both in academics and martial arts. But Happy says he's just a slave. Everyone there is left confused. What, a slave? What a joke. How could a slave attend the same university as his son? But Happy says with a smile that he never attended any university. William only helped him with bounty hunting because he can read. The boy's mother looks thoughtful, while the father says, "So, a slave? Does that mean we brought a slave to sit at the table with us and eat?" He gets irritated and asks, is the master even capable of educating his slaves? The table falls completely silent at that question. The father starts yelling and tells him to leave immediately and never get involved with William again. Happy lowers his head and says nothing. His wife reminds him that he's still a benefactor who helped William, but the father raises his hand. Benefactor? This is just a judgment made between two people, and it's not about a noble and a slave. A slave will always be a slave. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and the little girl goes to see who it is, assuming it might be her brother. She opens the door a little, and a very large person in the back says they're looking for William. The girl says he went out and asks what they want. The man just gives the girl a look while she screams for her mother. She opens the door slightly, and a very large person in the back said he is after William. The girl says he left and asks what he wants. The guy just gives a look to the girl while she shouts for her mother. He let out a high-pitched scream, alerting his family of the danger approaching outside. The leader of the exile clowns turned to his subordinate and gave a chilling order. He commanded them to kill his parents and leave a message with their blood as a warning. And to complete the grim plan, they would take the sister and use her to lure William into their sewers. The leader grabbed him tightly. His hand covered his mouth, trying to muffle his screams. Desperate, he struggled with tears streaming down his face. Terrified, his parents, with horrified faces, were shouting her name. Immediately, they got up from the table and ran to save their daughter. The father's eyes were wide with panic as he dashed towards the door. And on the other hand, Happy Face stayed at the table, an eerie smile reappearing on his face. A clown mocked, saying he would quickly kill both before dealing with the boy. Paralyzed by the killer's threat, the father watched in absolute terror. The boy slowly rose, his head slightly tilted, while a terrifying smile spread across his face, as if preparing to act. The father shouted angrily, blaming the boy for bringing this chaos to the family. In a fraction of a second, the boy grabbed the hot bowl of stew that was on the table. With a precise movement, he hurled the bowl, thus deflecting the clown's blade, leaving the attacker in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. Still in shock, the father told Happy to deal with his wife first. The clown asked who that boy was, assuming he would be William. He remembered the girl saying that William was not home. Then his mind recalled a warning the woman had given about a possible variable. Then, with growing horror, he realized that boy must be that. The variable. The clown's eyes widened in the moment of terror, recognizing that the boy was his hunter. A maniacal smile of face, however, never disappeared. As he deflected the blade with his hand, the clown, full of rage, wanting to know where Rap was going. But Rap dodged the attack so easily that it left the clown. Then, with impressive speed, Rap delivered a powerful kick to the clown's face, and the force of the blow made the killer recoil in pain. Rap grabbed the clown's arm mid-movement, stopping him abruptly. Then, he launched a brutal counterattack, landing a punch in the man's stomach. The clown realized he had to take this fight seriously or he would be the next to die. Then quickly, he pulled out a second hidden blade from his other sleeve. With two swords in hand, he charged in a flurry of strikes, but Happy, with the insane smile, simply ducked under the attack. The clown was because he knew that Happy would be able to anticipate each of his movements. He also tried to himself, to regain control of the fight. Then he began swirling his swords in a complex and deadly pattern. That killer moved like a whirlwind, creating a vortex of steel. To use all his power, he refused to fail in that mission. And Rap watched everything, with a mischievous expression of amusement. He identified the killer's technique as the sword dance. The clown froze completely, because Rap knew the name of that technique. Then, he demanded to know how a simple boy could recognize his style, and Rap, with expression, replied that he knew another person who used it. The clown began to dock, assuming he was just a clumsy imitator, but Rap revealed that the arena's grandfather was the founder of that technique. The killer looked back, completely and unable to believe what he was hearing, and Rap began to explain that the sword dance was from the grandfather. It was a legendary technique in the past. Lucartian, being the tavern keeper, he brought the legend to the arena. The clown seemed perplexed by the sudden story about the founder of the arena, but even incredulous, the narrative sounded disturbingly true. Innocent asked when he would resume his attack. The clown exploded with rage that he was already attacking. He unleashed his technique, promising to make Rap bleed to death and Happy impassive, merely in the face of the deadly attack. He told the clown that his own version of that technique was perfect. The clown's eyes widened, and as he witnessed what seemed impossible, it was as if he were looking in a mirror. As Happy copied his movements, he matched each move. It was so perfect that it seemed there was no longer any discord. Happy explained that the sword dance uses curves to maintain uninterrupted speed, but in reality those curves were a defense for a single attack. Then he revealed the greatest secret of that technique. Its founder was blind and, to compensate, created curves that covered all directions. These curves held his opponents until their position was identified, right? Then at that moment the defensive curve became a deadly straight line. So, with a cold smile, Rap declared that this would be the true sword dance. He stopped the clown's blade with his own hand, the grip as strong as steel, and with a single devastating technique, he thrust his hand into the clown's chest, who gasped in agony, his body convulsing from a fatal blow. Rap explained that Lucartian had gathered all the legends of the world and revealed that the final fight was always against him. A brutal headbutt made the clown crumble, his life draining away in seconds. Rap held the dying man while William's parents watched, terrified. Desperate, the clown grabbed Rap's arm. Trying to negotiate his life, he warned that Rap would die and the girl would have no chances either. The parents looked horrified, realizing that she had been kidnapped there. Rap demanded to know where she was, and the clown confessed everything. Then, with a strong pull, Rap lifted the defeated clown and ordered the man to guide him to the sewers. He dragged the clown out of the house, leaving his parents behind. William's father could only look back, his mind drowning in shock. Finally, he choked down an apology for all his terrible misunderstanding. The two parents knelt on the ground, overwhelmed by regret and fear of what was to come. Rap dragged his captive through the dark and narrow alleys of the city. They descended deep into the earth, entering the city's sewer system. The clown guided Rap through a long tunnel lit by torches to his hideout. He revealed that this was his main base, where he planned to lure William. In this setting, the clown mocked Rap, saying he would die there, asking for one last look. But instead of worrying, he found a wide, terrifying, inhumane smile from Rap. Elsewhere, a battered William finally arrived at his empty home. Happy, he said to the clown, who was only there because of his friend William. He remembered how even the man who raised him called him monster. In his last moments, the master looked at him with fear in his eyes, and the man's last breath was a whisper of the word monster. He recalled standing over the body of the little boy with empty eyes, but William was different. He still called him friend, even after seeing everything. He also remembered the kindness of the farm family. Since leaving the arena, more people began to call him human, and he turned to the clown saying he would go past him and not to worry. Perfection was in a bright but cold gaze, promising that she would be back safely. William watched in horror as the Rap disappeared into the shadows. He shouted to his father, saying they had to stop him somehow. His father calmly kept asking if Rap had promised that everything would be alright. William grabbed his sword, refusing to believe in such a simple promise. He knew this was not a simple fight. Happy would just end up dying. A horrific vision filled his mind with the image of Rap being executed by the clowns. His father asked if he planned to trade his own life for that of his sister. William ignored the question, aware that he needed to stop Rap right then. His father yelled at him, trying to prevent his reckless son. William replied that they should also report the exile clowns at the farm. Elsewhere, city guards were preparing to mobilize against a new threat. A report came in bringing the information that a guy armed with a sword was strolling through the streets, causing quite a stir. The captain, hearing the news, found all of this very crazy, as if it were a huge conspiracy. A guard ended up confirming that the guy was in fact the student William, and they encountered traces of his battle, proving it. He didn't think twice before taking out the bullies. Then another guard appeared, bursting in like a hurricane. He dropped the bomb. The exile clowns had kidnapped a girl from a town. Wow! The captain jumped from his chair, in shock. Now everything started to make sense. Suddenly, the guard also mentioned that the kidnapped girl was from William's family, and William was already heading straight for the central sewers like a hero in search of action. The captain realized that the clowns were attacking in a very conspicuous way, as if they wanted to be noticed. Then he began to put everything together and made a connection with William's recent fame as a bounty hunter. Since they couldn't kill him, the scoundrels kidnapped his family to use them as bait. The clown's two sons were planning a public spectacle. With William's family, for example, the captain began mentally cursing, realizing he should have seen this coming. He knew there were almost 100 clowns waiting down in the sewers. Leaving just William to face all this meant that certain death was on its way. Then, the subordinate shouted that he was running to the farm to take a look. The captain soon saw that the clown's strategy was to divide the guards' forces. The three main participants were about to clash violently, the clown leaders looking disdainfully at the lonely boy who had just arrived. He asked if the boy was the famous William. A terrifying smile spread across Rap's face as he faced the leader. He simply confirmed the suspicions, claiming the title of winner for himself. Meanwhile, a dizzy clown created a distraction for the town guards. The crazy guy threw his helmet at a guard, unbalancing the guy. After that, at a speed that seemed impossible, leaving the guards behind, the bald guard became confused, completely not understanding what had just happened. The clown made a joke, yelling that he was going to invade the house. The guards soon warned that the crazy clown was on the move. At the same time, on the quiet farm, the sun was shining brightly, and William was there gathering his supplies, ready to make Rap's medicine. Then, with a smile, he decided to prepare the herbs that would help him. His first step would be to prepare something to relieve the pain and help him sleep. But a sudden noise made her look up. It was the invading clown, coughing and out of breath. Winnie stood in shock, demanding to know what that guy was doing there. In the distance, the clown lady watched with her plan unfolding. She stood there with her sword drawn, watching the farm that was now under threat. The leader of the clowns laughed at the picturesque scene before him. He mocked Rap for thinking he could fight them all alone. Rap knew that the clowns intended to finish him off. From the beginning, he decided that he would also have to fight to the death if things got heated. A dark aura erupted, and he charged against the army that awaited him. No one in the crowd expected the fight to begin so explosively, and Rap threw the first punch, a brutal hit to a clown's face. His fists and feet became a blur of pure action. He struck the other clown, all while wearing a crazy smile on his face. The impact streams began, showing that the battle had truly begun. In an instant, each clown pulled their weapons, preparing for the fight, and Rap dove into the battle, creating a whirlwind of chaos under control. He shouted that he was not there to compete but to wipe everyone out. His eyes were fixed on Elle, promising he would save her no matter what. He yanked a sword from a fallen enemy, becoming a true blur. The blade glimmered, slicing through the first wave of attacks. He moved like a dancer, the sword an extension of his body. The clowns shouted for him to come out and fight them on equal terms, but Happy Face responded to their challenge with a devastating special strike. He took down two more clowns without changing his expression. His blades sliced through their thrusts with mastery. He gripped onto a wild attack, using the momentum to his advantage, but two clowns fell as he blocked with his own body. He stabbed his sword and a dagger into two attackers at the same time. The battlefield became a storm of bodies and gleaming steel, and he grabbed an enemy's sword with his hand, not caring about the pain, and the clown could only watch in horror at the insane strength of that boy. Happy Face disarmed him, making the blade fly from his hand, and soon drove the pommel of his own sword into the other clown's chest. The lead clown watched, mouth agape at the madness of the situation. He could not understand how they were losing everything in their favor. That one boy was controlling the whole mess in a way. Surreal, his eyes burned like a green light filled with hate, deciding to end that situation. He picked up a fallen crossbow, aimed straight at Rap, the target, unaware of what was coming, and he focused, a question mark appearing as he prepared to shoot. He growled that Rap wanted to see blood, so he would show it to that boy. Then he fired the bolt, which flew through the air toward the target, but the leader saw with horror that it was too late to regret. The bolt sliced through the air in an explosion of red light, and Rap caught the bolt in the air with a smile that wouldn't fade away. The leader's eyes widened with the tremendous confusion created, extremely puzzled. It was then that he saw William holding his sister, rescuing her amidst the chaos, taking advantage of the distraction that Rap had created. And Rap launched himself towards the stunned leader. He grabbed the boss's leg with a grip. A question mark appeared again in that guy's head. After all, he had just been captured. Then, with a strength that seemed supernatural, Rap hurled the leader from his position. The bastard fell to the ground as the crossbow slid away, and Rap landed, by the grace of God, letting the crossbow fall onto the fallen leader. Rap told William to stay back and out of the mess. The leader lifted his head, confused about why they were calling the boy William. William crept away as all the clowns focused on Rap, and this chaos allowed him to get close enough to save his sister. He, William, then embraced his sister with a weight on his heart, apologizing for putting Rap in danger, and Rap asked him to keep her safe and trust him. He promised he would really try hard, asking William to trust him too. Then, with the final and terrifying smile, Rap launched himself back into the fight. William wanted to help, but he knew he could only watch the show unfolding in front of him. It was more than a fight, it was a massacre. Mano and Rap, a lone hero fighting against an entire army of clowns. A leader recovered his crossbow, his eyes fixed on his target. Again he aimed, but Rap dodged as if he had read a script. A question mark appeared on this guy's head again when he realized that his attacks were in vain. Finally, he figured out that it wasn't just coincidence. Rap moved whenever he thought about shooting him. It was as if this guy had eyes all over his body, sensing every movement around him. Then William embraced his sister while the battle cries echoed around. He was wide-eyed, starting to understand what was happening. At first he thought Rap was just another fighter. Then he began to question, after seeing the consequences of his first hunt, how powerfully strong Rap really was. And now, watching that impossible battle, he finally got the answer. Man, it didn't matter who tried. No one had the slightest chance of defeating Rap. The leader, completely incredulous, was wondering if Rap was really human. He tried to shoot again, but Rap had already moved like a rocket. Our hero blocked the bolt with his hand, looking like he couldn't care less about everything. Suddenly, he delivered a powerful kick to another clown's face. One of the clowns screamed to call the boss. As chaos reigned, the leader's face became completely distorted with rage as he prepared to jump into the fray. He took off his cloak and drew his swords ready for action. His fists were so tight that his fingers were white with fury. Then, with a deafening shout, he ordered everyone to back off. The leader's sword collided with Rap's and sparks flew as if they were fireworks. His face was a mask of pure rage as he advanced with bloodlust. The swords met in an explosion of blows that looked like gold. Rap disarmed the leader of one sword with a single strike. It was like goodbye, my brother. He recovered quickly, with both swords ready for another attack. The swords clashed again in a crazy display of skill, and Rap moved with incredible fluidity, dodging and stopping all the attacks. The leader's eyes widened in shock once again, seeing the absurd defense of the boy. He shouted that they could not end like this, in a place like this. His revenge against the kingdom had barely begun. He began to speak of the suffering he had endured, used as human shields and ridiculed by everyone. He roared about a deep regret and hatred for the world. But Happy looked at this desperation and saw a familiar vision. These guys were full of hatred, but this hatred was born from the world that created them. He remembered his master asking if he harbored any resentment towards those who raised him. His master gently placed his hand on his head, telling him not to do that. He also cautioned him to never let hatred consume his life, or he would end up becoming a monster worse than those he hated. The leader's eyes, filled with hatred, clashed with Rap's calm and wise gaze, and Hebe understood that the end for the arena fighters was always the same. He drove his sword through the leader's defenses with monstrous ease. The leader gasped, his life draining away as blood filled his mouth. Their end had always been stained with blood and violence. He stood there, in silence, stunned, barely able to comprehend that he had won, but then the boy simply shouted with joy and relief, realizing that they had truly won. The remaining clowns fled in terror as Rap stood victorious over the leader. Rap told William not to worry, that the farm had plenty of herbs. William could only look at him with tears streaming down his injured face. He agreed that they should hurry, but he already sensed that soldiers must be arriving. The guard captain ran through the sewers, asking why the paths were so clear. He looked back in confusion, seeing his own men right behind him. The captain froze, shocked to see Rap standing over the clown leader. And worst of all, he couldn't believe that all the exiled clowns had been defeated that day. The entire army of exiled clowns was defeated by a single person, Rap. Although many clowns had managed to escape, they had lost all their strength without their leader. The guards finally arrived, splashing through the water in a frantic rush, but the story of what happened was distorted by an overly soldier. Rumors began to circulate that William had annihilated the clowns without help from anyone, turning into a national hero. Within the Knight's Order, guards gossiped about the famous bounty hunter, and in the taverns, the guys spoke with admiration about the power of the university student. Even at the university, students whispered about William's incredible feat. That story spread throughout the market. Everyone praised his name. The rumors of the new hero finally reached the king's ears. Before any official report came out, William's name was already on everyone's lips. But before any rumor could truly spread, Rap ended his battle. Simply impossible. In the sewers, he was running 1,000 miles home. Rap's resistance was wearing thin, but he pressed on, even with his mind foggy in the prison cell. The clown leader spoke of the kingdom's commander. The commander listened in silence, with a grim expression. The clown leader admitted that he once respected the commander, before the rebellion. A flashback showed them as comrades, a war hero transformed. As the rebel king, the clown leader bitterly blamed someone for his tragic fall. The commander asked if he was referring to the guy who annihilated a campaign 20 years ago. He confirmed, yes, of course, recalling how he miraculously survived the massacre. The memory of that day was etched in his mind forever. He recalled the man slaughtering soldiers while holding a newborn baby, but the king merely called the story a lie and exiled the man. Filled with rage, he became a disgrace to the knights, a constant joke to everyone, mocked and threatened. He lost his honor and everything he loved, and now that same monster had returned in the form of Rap. He challenged the commander to tell the same story to the king. Now the commander fell silent, with a fixed gaze on the broken man. The clown leader desperately wanted to know who that monster really was. In silence, the commander turned and walked away from the cell. He paused for a moment, recalling the events. He noted that no one had died, as if they had been kept alive on purpose. A true monster reasoned that he would kill anyone to achieve his goal. He also declared that the clown was the only monster for trying to kill a child. A new chapter began, and this chapter is called The World of Rap. Then the flashback. The younger Rap was dazed under the torrential rain. His master was shouting his name, pleading for him to respond and breathe. Rap's eyes were clouded with the bloodied face from a brutal fight. His master held him, saying the wounds were too deep for that opponent. Rap's eyes slowly began to focus and regain light. He smiled, despite the pain, saying he needed to become stronger to survive. His master asked why he was obsessed with his enemies who were so strong, warning about Lucastian. The ape fell silent, unable to explain his desperate and unnecessary quest for strength. He was haunted by the idea of losing his master who was everything to him. He remembered seeing his master being taken away with a sword in his chest. The image of his master falling into a dark pit was etched in his mind. He grasped his master's hand, promising to face everything alone. A wide, tearful smile spread across his face, filled with a new determination. His master looked at him with his own eyes filled with tears of sadness. The Rap confessed his fear of being alone, that the master was all he had. The master was the only warmth he knew in his entire world. He saw the master fall into a pit of swords while Lucastin watched everything. Then, back in the present, Rap ran with a joyful smile, approaching the farm. Suddenly, everything was surrounded by guards ordering him to stop and identify himself. Then, with surreal speed, he snatched a sword from a guard as if it were a joke and sent him flying with a single kick, stunning the others. The guards shouted to catch him, while the happy one ran home. He landed at the farm, his eyes scanning the room. He saw Winnie and her family, and then he calmed down a bit for a moment. After all, he was pure energy. En shouted his name while pushing him to escape from a guard, and he protected her with his body, taking the impact of the attack. Then, with a smile of someone who was full of rage, he grabbed the guard's sword, stopping everything. Winnie hugged him tightly, saying everything was all right now. At that moment, Cigar appeared, stopping the other guard who tried to attack, and Happy looked at his hand that was trembling and bleeding. A drop of blood fell into the wounded palm, and a single tear rolled down his dirty face. Our hero began to remember the gentle hand of his master, recalling the promise that his world would have hope again. A solitary tear flowed down his face, a symbol of as much pain as hope. That tear fell from his chin, carrying all the weight of his memories. He stayed with Winna as they together reached a sunset that promised a new day. A single candle in the room flickered, casting a gentle warmth that seemed to comfort them. But suddenly, a gust of wind extinguished the light, plunging everything into darkness. Meanwhile, a couple of elderly people insisted that Rap would finally let his tired body rest. Outside, the captain of the guard confirmed that no clown had been found, but they left a patrol just to be safe. Hidden in a tree, the injured clown Cigar was gasping, watching the patrol leave. He gathered what would have been safer for everyone if the slave had passed away, but Cigar admitted to himself that seeing the boy die would have been an extremely difficult task. He was surprised to notice how much the farmhouse family cared about the boy. He turned to his companion and assured that the other clown was so injured that he wouldn't be able to return. Thus, they decided to wait for the patrol to move away before making the next move. Then, the dreams of the night filled the air as they waited in the shadows. A cool breeze whispered among the leaves, carrying a sense of foreboding. Suddenly, Cigar's eyes opened at the feeling of an unexpected presence approaching. A knight holding a torch appeared and told Cigar not to act impulsively. He reminded Cigar that his true mission was to assassinate the royalty, not to save peasants. Then, with shining eyes, the knight gave a warning signal that he could not be eliminated. The knight then turned and walked away. Cigar remained in the tree, merely swaying at the knight's threat as the night gave way to dawn. A new chapter was about to begin for all. Royal flags waved high in the sky, announcing a new order from the king. A royal messenger arrived in the town square, calling for William. Another messenger followed him, for someone named Happy Face. Both were summoned to the castle, leaving their families and friends astonished. The crowd was murmuring, incredulous, realizing that the slave had also been called to the king's castle. Wow! William felt nervous, adjusted his new formal outfit, and prepared for the royal meeting. An officer told him that His Majesty intended to grant him the title of knight, and instructed him to kneel and accept the honor, wealth, and respect. But William, with a look, simply shook his head, saying he was not qualified. The officials exchanged glances, completely by his refusal. William confessed that he had done nothing to deserve such an honor. He explained that he had gone to the Rap and did everything while he was hiding in. Then, with apology, he repeated that he was definitely not prepared for the title. The official let out almost breaking into a smile. He revealed that the king already knew the truth about the situation. Making an illiterate slave a knight would cause a reel among the nobles. The king's plan was to use William's story as a reliable heroism to elevate both. He warned William to keep this a secret as it was a matter of high confidentiality. Leaving William alone, the official told him to come out when he was ready. Then, in front of the king, William was praised for having destroyed the evil clowns of Aguilio. His Majesty also declared that no one in the kingdom would doubt his qualifications. As the crowd his name, William was officially named a knight. Then the king ordered that Rap be taken to the knights as his apprentice. With a he concluded the ceremony, saying he could hardly wait for his future work. Later, the maidservants gossiped about William's striking features as they mediated. William apologized to Rap, admitting he had made a total mess, but our Rap was always, and insisted they were safe because William was there to lead. He acknowledged that he was still nothing, unable to assess situations like William, and remembered how he knew nothing about bandits or the dangers of the road. His first with William confirmed his own mise. He didn't even know he should report his families, he just blindly fled with Rap. He was just a person who knew how to fight. Rap's face lit up as William called him one of the people he knew. This type of decision, William explained, was a force that went beyond the physical. And Rap smiled enthusiastically, saying that he was learning from William and that they should be true to themselves. William was clearly emotional. A single tear rolled down his face, and Rap, filled with confidence, spoke of how they would become true friends of trust. William clenched his fist, silently promising that he would never run away or hide again. He wanted to become real, instead of an imposter, and strong enough to prevent another tragedy. Looking at his friend, William asked if Rap could teach him how to be strong. Then Rap felt scared and surprised at the sincere request from his friend. With a broad and joyful smile, he agreed to teach William everything he knew. The two friends decided to visit the knights before returning home, but in the training fields, the apprentices became furious at the news. One shouted angrily that now a slave was considered his equal. He slammed his wooden sword against the ground, rejecting this decision. The furious apprentice pointed at Rap, promising that he would prove Rap unqualified. William tried to calm things down, reminding them that it was the king's order. The apprentice directed his fury at William, surprised that he would defend a servant. William was confused by all this anger, especially after the recent battle. The man praised William as a true hero, worthy of all respect, but shouted that Rap was nothing but a fool, a cult of low status. A shadow of fear crossed William's face, understanding that the situation was more complicated than he had expected. The apprentice smiled with arrogance, thinking that William's reaction showed that Rap was truly useless. His eyes sparkled with malice as he promised to make Rap renounce himself. Rap calmly told William not to worry, promising that he would end the fight quickly. The two faced each other, part of the training, surrounded by a crowd. Then, with a confident smile, Rap raised his sword, announcing that it was time to begin. The other apprentices soon started his awkward and unprofessional stance. His opponent admonished that this was not a training match, but rather a lesson in status and power. That apprentice was with anger, vowing to crush Rap from the crown of his head. But, instead of aiming for the head, he struck low and hit Rap's jaw. He wished that the slave should feel honored to be hit by a knight's sword. The apprentice unleashed a flurry of relentless blows with his wooden sword, he taunting Rap's slowness to act, and the other apprentices cheered him on, eager to see the slave defeated. William watched from the sidelines, feeling a growing inside him. Then suddenly he realized that Rap was just teaching fragility. The apprentice demanded that the useless slave apologize. In the blink of an eye, Rap dropped his sword and delivered a precise punch right to that guy's stomach. The apprentice's eyes widened, and as he gasped for air, he fell to the ground, completely incapacitated by that single powerful blow. The other apprentices exploded with furious that Rap had used his strength, but William saw the truth behind it all. He realized that Rap had blocked every sword attack. He knew that using a fist was an act of mercy. With a real weapon, he would have eliminated the defeated apprentice. Still holding his stomach, he felt in pain. That single punch was more agonizing than all the years of brutal training he had endured. In his mind, he saw Rap not as a boy, but as a monster. Rap said that he shouldn't have aimed low or he would lose easy fights, and he asked the apprentice with a smile if that was what he had come here for. He then simply told the boy to have resilience, turning to face him again. The apprentice was realizing that this lesson was different from all he had ever had. He could not accept that a common slave was teaching him anything. Rap simply smiled cheerfully and announced he was going after him. The apprentice could only look back, completely confused, his mind spinning. With a precise strike, Rap's sword shattered his opponents, shocking the crowd. That's it, today's video ends here. If you liked it, leave a like, enjoy, and share. As soon as we release more chapters, we'll bring the new parts, and I'm out. At that exact moment, the commander of the Royal Knights appears like thunder. He bursts into a shout, asking what those fools were doing there. Meanwhile, Finney is shaking like a green twig, with Happy Face pressing a broken wooden blade against his neck. The commander approaches, ready to ask questions. He questions why Finney was terrorizing the others, stating that he had ordered everyone to be taken to their quarters, reminding them that he was the one who made the recruit. The commander challenges that any matter should be dealt with directly by him. The fear on Ben's face is palpable. He is pale and refuses to admit anything, while the others also scream in desperate coordination. All together they shout, "No, sir." The commander's lips twist in indignation. He then orders them to disperse, and the crowd runs away as if fleeing from a fire. Only 3 characters remain in the training field, and a brief silence settles in. After a while, he turns and promises that they will never have to deal with that kind of people again. His explanation is clear. They were not chosen for combat tasks, but to be the face of the kingdom. After all, there would not be much training or many missions. Their mission was to learn to be diplomats at royal events. William, furrowing his brow, realizes that they have been reduced to mere puppets. Fearing that Happy Face could be treated like anyone else, he asks if he can at least watch the training sessions. The commander, puzzled, asks why he is so worried, since no one opposes. William replies that living a farce one day will require him to prove his worth, and he does not want to feel powerless when that day comes. He reaffirms that he does not want to flee or live in shame anymore, promising to become someone that neither pen nor sword can break. The commander, hearing this, frowned, feeling his head weigh. The king created a false hero, but the true one was budding. Then, the commander looks at Happy Face and asks if he feels the same. Happy Face confirms. They decide together that they will strengthen themselves, and the commander is left speechless, looking around and remembering what happened a few days ago. The Knight Commander leafs through the reports, shocked to discover that Smiling Face was raised as a slave by Luke Reston from a young age. The knight beside him corrected. No, he was shaped by gladiators in the arena of Luke Reston. He investigated the records and noticed that while the current fighters are mere criminals, the previous ones were incredibly powerful. In those times, constant wars filled the arena with high-value prisoners and defeated soldiers. He learned to stay alive among these formidable warriors. This means he is the strongest among the strong. And look, that's the only piece of information I brought today. I was bogged down with a bunch of tasks. The Knight Commander relaxed as he read, thinking that if Lucas Tom were still alive, he might be able to ask him directly about Smiling Face. But all records about Smiling Face are marked as unknown, with notes suggesting that a deeper investigation would be necessary. It was clear that there was much more information about this enigmatic figure. The reporter added that the territory of Lucaston extends over various regions, so since he is a traveler, it is quite possible that more information could be reached if we trace his steps. But a decision had already been made regarding him, and this deepening does not relate to the operations of the Order of Knights. There is a specific reason for this investigation. He fell silent for a moment, then admitted that he wasn't sure, but he had the impression that there was a connection to the event he knew. The dates and locations of the records had a strange coincidence with that event. Returning to the present, the Knight Commander observes Smiling Face, thinking that the investigation would likely advance sooner or later. He just needed to observe for now. But before that, he felt that those guys would give more work. As they say, birds of a feather flock together. The growth of one and the skills of the other are truly something to keep an eye on. Thanks to them, his own will, which had cooled since he became commander, began to heat up again, as if awakening. After pondering for a while, he decided he would ensure that the boy could observe freely for now, before deciding the next step. The scene shifts to the humble cabin where Smiling Face lives. There he appears all happy, showing the certificate to his grandparents and announcing that he has become the apprentice knight. After that, he asks where Winnie is. Winnie's grandfather says she is at work, while the grandmother reads the newspaper murmuring about emancipation and free citizenship. Then he pulls out a large bag and offers all his reward to the grandfather. Winnie's grandfather happily squeezes the bag of money. He asks enthusiastically if all this is really for him. The grandmother is astonished at how much he surprises her every day. After delivering the things, the Smiling Face politely asks to train with William. The grandmother agrees, commenting that as a free man he no longer needs to do domestic work. He leaves all happy, promising that he will work when he returns. The grandfather waves joyfully, praising him as a true grandson, while the grandfather comments on how quickly children grow up, and the grandfather responds proudly. He is not just a child, he is a blessing. Meanwhile, the Smiling Face meets William, cheerful, humming as they go back to watch the training. In the training ground, the knight commands the apprentices to give their best. The Smiling Face points and whispers to William, asking him to observe the most skilled apprentice. Instead of just looking at the sword arm, he should focus on how the guy judges the distance and adjusts his center of gravity. These things can only be felt through movement. But William interrupts, saying he has understood and is focusing first on the center of gravity, then on movement. As soon as his wounds heal, we will try everything, but for now just observe as much as possible. The boy William, with a sharp and focused look, closely watches the knight. He takes incessant notes, commenting on details that put his target under pressure, sweating bullets. It's impressive how our hero manages to identify the most outstanding student in just a few seconds. A little later, they settle in the library. The calm atmosphere allows William to offer some valuable tips while reading aloud a letter. The Smiling Face follows every word. William, all excited, asks him to guess a phrase that he magically recites in full. True courage does not lie in the sword, but in a heart that chooses justice. William asks how the boy found out, and replies all satisfied that he used his deductions. and, upon seeing the sunlight, says that since the light was going towards the sun, that means it has passed noon. Meanwhile, in another corner, they are leaning over mathematics. How many loaves would be necessary to sustain 400 people for 20 days on a diet of 3 loaves a day? The calculation reveals itself. They need nothing less than 24,000 loaves. And now, what is the next line? Asks William, full of uncertainties. And here comes Smiling Face, who is practically a bookworm, showing that the knowledge he thought he didn't have was actually quite solid. The boy learns at the speed of light, but gently catches his attention. William makes a reminder. I think that's enough for today. It's late, so see you tomorrow. Smiling Face exclaims, for God's sake, since when has it gotten so dark? See you tomorrow, William. That was really fun, and almost flying. William watches that boy disappear and gives a slight wave. I will also make an effort. I won't let them leave me behind. On the other hand, a girl is reclining, rubbing her neck and about how dangerous the roads can be at night. She thinks that if it depends on her, she will end up spending another night at the pharmacy. But what did she want? As her thoughts wander, she wonders how Smiling Face's audience with the king went. 3 days have passed since then. She looks at the sky and, of not being able to go home because of work. What is this? She just wanted to get back quickly. She announces, we're closed. At that moment, Smiling Face pushes the door open and says, it's me, I'm here to take you home. As they stroll through the dark streets, she asks if the old man sent him with a lantern in hand. Smiling Face confirms, yes, he said today is a happy day, so I should take you home for a happy meal one day. She leans in excitedly, asking if there's any good news. With a radiant smile and not hiding anything, she responds, the king recognized me as a free citizen and appointed me as a squire. Winnie, astonished, covers her mouth in shock. What? That's quite an advancement. No wonder he didn't call out like this so quickly. A radiant smile blooms on her face and she suggests, wow, I also need to do something for you. Calmly, she asserts, seeing everyone happy makes me happy as well. She observes and comments that it is undoubtedly great news. Your grandmother will be on cloud 9. With a smile, she looks up and confirms, yes, she's very happy, everything has been resolved. From now on, only good things will happen. He then gave her a more intense look, and joy overflowed from his face. Soon Smiley had a touch of worry and reminded Winnie, hey, don't overburden yourself, okay? I'm here to protect you always. Winnie, in contemplative silence, was just watching Smiley's secure back. It was then that, in an affectionate gesture, she closed her eyes and gently placed her hand on him. Ismail was left confused, a mix of warmth and shyness overwhelmed his being. She then expressed a sincere thanks. Thank you, it's the first time in my life that I'm really looking forward to something like this. Willie couldn't articulate anything, just stared at her while she cleaned herself up. Smiley initiated the conversation and, with genuine concern, asked, are you still taking your medicine properly? He kept his gaze firmly ahead, not wanting to face his vulnerable state. Yes, I'm feeling stronger and sleeping much better, she replied, with a sparkle in her voice. That's wonderful. Smiley's response was cool, filled with joy. When they arrived at the farm, an old man with long hair appeared. Winnie, you've arrived. She was stunned, with wide eyes filled with confusion. What's going on here, Grandpa? She questioned. It's a party, a celebration, the old man replied. Still perplexed, Winnie continued. But why is this happening on our farm? The elder soon approached and exclaimed, relax, you didn't overload yourself. And there, as a sign of invitation, he added, the gravedigger is here too. The Saga approached Smiley and shook his hand, celebrating, it's a pleasure to meet you, congratulations on joining the Knights. Smiley returned the handshake, thank you. A drop of sweat trickled down Winnie's face as she faced the old man and in an excited tone asked, but you said it was just a family dinner. How many people did you really invite? I invited everyone, he exclaimed excitedly, and the already bustling farm was filled with voices and smiles. At the party, people were at ease, talking and celebrating. We are having a party, come on, you can help. After all, he is our grandson. The old man, with every corner of the farm filled with guests, shared what he had called everyone, from the butcher to the blacksmith. Winnie looked around, unable to grasp all the confusion. Wait a second, where did the money for all this come from? I used the reward I earned, the grandfather informed casually. Winnie's eyes widened in genuine shock. What reward is that? A few steps away, Smiley explained, it's money I earned when I was called to be a squire. And in a split second it dawned on Winnie, so all this money is Smiley's? The old man, already caught up in the festive atmosphere, raised a glass in acknowledgement. The aroma of money left a man with a handkerchief in ecstasy. Taking advantage of the celebratory mood, he requested a speech. Old man, give us a speech. The old man, quite at ease, with his belly already full, enjoyed the vibe of the party, raising his arms and went in unison. You are going to become a knight of the realm. Applauding like never before, everyone was immersed in the celebration as Cairo Lion was surrounded by affection and festivities. It was a moment of contagious joy under a starry and perfectly lit sky. Winnie watched what was happening, seeing her friends surrounded by people, receiving praise and thanks. The old man then called out, hey Winnie, She rested her chin on her hand, disappointed. Yes? The old man looked toward the distant figure of Zyro Lion, contemplating, although he is now a free man, the fact that Zyro Lion was once a slave will never change. He bowed his head and continued, it will always be a shadow around him. There are those who do not recognize him, even look at him with disdain. Turning to Winnie, he explained warmly, that is why I want everyone to remember, Zyro Lion is part of our family. If you insult him, you are offending all of us. And the memory of that unfortunate moment returned to the mind of old Zerulean, wounded, marching unsteadily. He has truly shown how much he cares about us. Then, the old man's gaze turned to uncertainty, along with the little old lady with white hair and Winnie. They observed, we have to show him how we feel. That is why we organized this party. Realizing the true intention, she whispered, why didn't they say this before? The elder remained silent, his eyes fixed on Zyro Lion, and commented, and, more importantly, we need to let Zyro Lion feel what it is like to share a life with us. An image of him awkwardly scratching the back of his neck while talking to others appeared, making Winnie involuntarily smile. William approached Zyro Lion and called out, hey man. Upon seeing William, Zyro pointed to the party excited. William, there's so much delicious food there, let's eat together. William's father had a tight expression and hesitated. He was in front of Zyro Lion feeling a natural pressure. After a moment, William's father placed his hand on his heart and gave a slight bow, sincerely apologizing. I really want to apologize for my rudeness and the offenses I have committed. Only after realizing that I owe my family's life to you did it dawn on me how foolish I was. I'm sorry. William stood silently observing the exchange between Zyro Lion and his father. With a gentle smile, Lion approached him, offering an embroidered handkerchief with sincere gratitude. Older brother, this is a gift for you. I embroidered this myself. Thank you for helping me. Zyro Lion accepted enthusiastically, saying thank you. Everyone come inside, let's raise our glasses. The old scavenger looked at his table and complained, after eating this I will have to dig my own grave. He spoke in a dissatisfied grumbling tone. I can't stand looking at that old man anymore. The collector raised his wine glass, promising Saga, if you achieve something great, I will throw a party for you too. Youth needs to taste success at least once. After speaking, he walked away, sighing. Wow, the wine is gone. Let me get more. Saga remained silent, looking down in deep thought. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appeared behind him and coldly reminded him, Saga, the date has already been set. Saga felt a tug pulling him away from the lively party, plunging him into a dark silence. In 2 months, the competition of the Order of the Knights of the Kingdom would begin, where everyone would be present. The eyes of the mysterious man sparkled with malice as he smiled. It would be the day of the king's assassination. In the arena, 2 swords clashed in a stalemate. It was the training of the Order of Knights, with crowds watching the fierce fight. No one could look away from that brutal battle unfolding. A row of knights raised their swords. Every year, the top 10 knights of the order were honored separately, while the new knights, with determination, prepared for the selection. A young blonde clashed swords with a dark-haired opponent. For the newcomers, testing their skills against the officers was a one-time opportunity. The king sat resting his chin on his hand, observing the battles with heightened attention. Those who excelled in the competitions would likely become official knights, making the competition among the newcomers extremely fierce. Zhao Lion, with his hands on his hips, was analyzing the rules on the board that displayed the selection guidelines. A young brown-haired boy suddenly appeared, extending his hand and calling him, "Hey, you idiot!" He crossed his arms and looked sideways, mocking, "Do you think an illiterate like you can suddenly learn just by watching?" He turned his head arrogantly, demanding, "Give up on the selections. My family is the most influential in organizing this exam." He took pride in his family's management of the arena and the organization of the equipment. "This place is basically my amusement park, right down to the food and cash prize." Before I could even react, the brown-haired young man changed his tone and, pounding his chest with a smile, taught how disgusting it would be to have a filthy slave in competition. The atmosphere around Zyro Mihana grew heavy as he cast a deadly glare at the brown-haired boy, clenching his fists and thinking of the other family members who shared the same opinion. "You better know your place, jerk." The brown-haired youth approached, speaking uncontrollably. "Alright, I wasn't on your team so I didn't see it personally, but I heard everything. When he fought you, it was a beating." He imagined the scene and spoke with excitement and disdain. The guy took hits from every direction. Only in that moment of rage did he manage to land a single punch. The brown-haired young man closed his eyes, a gesture that revealed remorse. He realized that in many ways he was like a child. After a long chat full of judgments, Zhe Maya replied, "You know, I didn't intend to get into this, but what you said made me want to participate." The expression of the brown-haired young man hardened upon hearing this, but he quickly regained his arrogant look, turning toward the exit. He put on a dismissive scene and shouted, "The reality is that this opportunity won't be yours. Someone like you has no chance in the exam." William held a paper and began to read its contents. For the first time in the selection, a knowledge test would be added to the combat tests. Zalma's curiosity was piqued and he asked, "What's going on here?" William looked up and explained that they were testing the general understanding before the selection assessment. William commented, "In my opinion, the family organizing this exam wants to eliminate the competition." Zalma, confused, questioned, "What do you mean?" Smiling carefreely, William revealed, "The answers to this knowledge test are going to be a challenge." The blonde young man raised an eyebrow, deciding whether to categorically refuse what William proposed. The brown-haired young man just rolled his eyes and began to provoke him. "Impressive, you always are number one. But if you miss even a single question, you can be sure your place in the hierarchy is going downhill. Failing would be a great embarrassment for your family." These words shook the confidence of the young blonde, who hesitated, furrowing his brows. Quickly he grabbed the answer sheet while the young brown-haired boy watched with satisfaction. Then he put his arm around the shoulder of the young blonde, adding, with a sparkle in his eyes, "This is more like it should be. Imagine what a wonderful sight we will have." Zia Alma commented, "If all the allied families come in first, we will create this amazing thing somewhere else." He said he didn't plan to participate, but the other's insistent speech piqued his interest. William, however, arched his head, reflecting on the roll in his hands. After a contemplative moment, William suggested, "So why not try? But don't forget the difference in study time between you and the others. That could weigh against you." He continued with firmness in his eyes, "With everything you've studied, even if you dedicate every second of this week, what you have won't be enough." But looking directly into Zia Alma's eyes, he added, "However, this is a test where they underestimate you and the examiner's intentions are clear. I can foresee some questions on the test." Zia Alma was intrigued by what William said and asked, "Is there a way?" Memories of the classroom and university flashed through William's mind. He remembered how he always stood out. "It wasn't just my effort, but my ability to guess what the evaluator wanted to know." He looked back at Zia, his voice sounding firm. "A bit of luck. If I'm right, you can still pass, but the chances are quite slim. Everything depends on your total commitment." Zia Alma listened to this in silence, letting William's words cloud his thoughts. As time passed, the test results were revealed a week later. Zia Alma lit up among the crowd upon seeing his name on the acceptance list. If he had scored 1 point less, it would have all been lost. The atmosphere at the camp was dense as lead, testing only 1 month for combat assessment. Many, angry at Shami's success, joined. The father of the young brown-haired boy raised his voice. "What is the deal with the family? What does that mean? He is not illiterate." The young man with brown hair retorted emphatically, "He must have cheated." "Father, heated discussions, especially among the nobles whose children fell behind," said the Mayan. They burst out. The father of the blonde young man growled, "My son is less than a slave when it comes to knowledge." The blonde young man was so pale that he could hardly repeat to himself that he had to endure this pressure. His father complained, disapproving of how ridiculous the test was. With paper in hand, the blonde young man was wondering if anyone remembered seeing Zion Maya studying all night. A tension in the air built up. The tense judges asked questions to all the candidates, while the smile remained in complete silence. The maneuvers reflected the tactics of ancient heroes. Calmly, he pointed out, "In war, what matters is not strength, but the will to protect the innocent." With that, he concluded that the strategy he used was not meant for destruction, but rather for preserving lives. The look of the knight captain widened in shock. The old man present in the center gestured. "Is this the so-called smile?" The one wearing the hat murmured, "Yes, it's best to give him a bad grade, that's what the organizer asked for." The knight captain became pensive, with his eyes closed, reflecting on whether he could help in any way. But, in the end, he scribbled on the paper, "Special bonus, 1 more." The knight captain stood there, his eyes fixed on Smile, lost in his own thoughts, remembering the past. He thought he had hoped the boy wouldn't participate in the knight's training festival. That could cause quite a stir. But, seeing him fight now, everything changed. He realized that Smile was not just any fighter. In fact, the captain only then understood why Lucas had risked his own life to protect him. A memory of Lucas, with his confident smile, popped into his mind. A crooked smile formed on his lips as excitement began to grow within him. "Smile, I want to see how far you can go," declared the captain, with a glimmer of determination in his eyes. With the table as support, he turned to William and asked, "So William, are you going to face the selection? Since you are already a knight, you don't need to take the written test, just the combat one." The young man continued. William replied, somewhat unsure, "I don't know if I can with my current strength. It's complicated even to compare myself to a real knight. I would be exposed right away." Smiley was unfazed. "So tell me, if you reach their level, would you present yourself?" With his arms crossed, his humor was evident. "Look at that, this guy is really planning to train for the test." The crowd watched closely, murmuring, "Look how he practices fencing." Under William's gaze, it seemed like William was giving him a training session, even teaching theory. "Ridiculous," someone exclaimed, full of envy. A brown-haired man made a sarcastic grimace. "It's a joke. Fighting isn't just about knowing how to swing a sword. No, his stance is a mess. See if he only knows how to fight with his fists." With a confident demeanor, he licked his lips and added, "Yes, darling, keeping this level, when you get here I will break all your bones." A challenge that only made the situation more interesting. I said I wanted to practice secretly in the warehouse because I was embarrassed. Ignoring the looks, Ismail excitedly spoke to William. "Look at this, William. I'm imitating you perfectly." William forced a smile while observing the boy's wrong posture. "This is how I really position myself," he thought, realizing that the crowd was just guessing. Indeed, thinking and acting were quite distinct things. With the wooden sword in hand, Smiley suggested, "How about you fight me so I can correct your posture? I will fight like you and point out the flaws." He fixed his gaze on William and added, "Firm, and I will see how much you have evolved. I will adjust my level to go along with you until the test in a month. Try to defeat me as much as you can. This is real." Smiley raised his sword excitedly and shouted, "Get up, William. You showed your potential, now it's my turn. Today is training free. It's relaxing." William adopted a serious expression, positioning his sword diagonally to the side, reflecting on the opponent's movements. He knew they were within the expected range. He swung the blade firmly, defended against an attack, and quickly counterattacked, gaining the advantage. With the sword raised, he took a few steps back, clenching his fist. He crouched down, keeping his eyes fixed on his opponent. "You're very slow, you should have timed that better. Weak attacks just waste energy." He calculated the other's movement, defending and analyzing the distance at the same time, and as the tension in the air increased, sweat accumulated on William's face. As he realized the truth in this clash, a light began to shine in William's mind, and he understood that not just a fight was unfolding, but a true game of intelligence and tactics. He had to decipher patterns, create feints, validate distances, counterattack with precision, and dominate each movement, adjusting and responding to the opponent's attack like a complex dance. Every movement mattered. The battle demanded meticulous reading and an evolving strategy. William noticed that Smiley's maneuvers, the strikes, the defenses, and the opponent's wear and tear operated on a totally distinct level, a way of fighting that left him impressed. When he finally managed to relax his expression and centered his sword, the true essence of those attacks began to make sense. He analyzed the flow of the combat, early attacks, ambushes, finishes, engagements, and precise strikes taking advantage of openings. William squinted one eye as if trying to focus on some blurred memory. In the next moment, his eyes widened as he noticed a blade descending rapidly toward him. A wave of tension coursed through him. His instinct screamed that a gap was forming and that he should block it at all costs. But, in an instant he froze, facing the true nature of the attack. He stared at the tip of the sword pointed directly at his face, judging that it was at a negligible distance. He pressed his lips together and pulled his sword back, and he was firm in his decision. A counterattack seemed like the ideal move, but William was paralyzed, feeling the blade slip against his neck. His eyes swayed in confusion. Then, like a snap in the brain, he recognized the opponent's technique, laughing as he realized that what he thought was a cut was merely a feint followed by a devastating attack. Before letting out a deep sigh, a wide smile spread across his face, the image dissolving like mist, revealing Smiley face amidst the combat. He announced that he had just achieved his third victory. Ismail did so and looked at William, offering a sincere applause and congratulations, but hesitated when trying to place a hand on his shoulder. A thought crossed William's mind. He had barely won this time and nonetheless collapsed on the ground exhausted. As he prepared for the approaching duel, William recalled the month he had spent honing his combat skills, but while observing the figure of Smiley Face, he was astonished to see how he appeared even more impressive. He was shocked to notice that Smiley Face seemed to have mimicked all his mistakes, habits, and even his strategies. Even more surprising was realizing that he had replicated his injuries as well, including that small, constant pain in his shoulder. In that, it went far beyond mere imitation and left William wondering how this was possible. Then Smiley Face eagerly suggested they finish training early so that William could rest before the next presentation. William immediately agreed, but then the captain of the Knights crossed his arms and began to explain that he would not participate in the evaluation during the Knight Orders tournament. He was only supposed to stand beside the captain observing, because the evaluation held no more meaning for him. They said he would only need to sit next to the king and wave to the citizens. The captain planned to inform him of this after the event. The captain was surprised that William had brought up this issue first, stroking his chin in thought and assuming that William did not care about the evaluation, since the true extent of his skills would be revealed if he actually dueled. William lowered his head, clasping his hands in silence. His mind was a storm as he realized that, after a month of training, he was still far behind the Knights. The training was ultimately about personal overcoming, but William felt inadequate in the presence of the true Knights. Still, he firmly declared his intention to participate in the evaluation. William argued that, in any case, he would be at a disadvantage, so he wanted to step into the field to acknowledge his shortcomings. The captain closed his eyes, frustrated by this unexpected determination from William. He sighed as he witnessed William's hopeful expression while sunlight flooded the environment. The next morning, the Knights gathered in the arena for the evaluation, where the father of the brown-haired boy spoke up, requesting a fair score, emphasizing that despite his supporting role, his son's grades should not be inflated. As the knights lined up, William and a second-level knight were called for the first match. It was Hero William against a second-level knight, causing the knights dressed in red to be puzzled, as if the commander was also participating. None of them should be in the official competition. However, the spectators in brown clothing eagerly speculated that it was just a demonstration fight to explain the rules. Despite the high expectations, inside the tent, the captain of the knights sternly instructed the second-level knight, warning him about his opponent. He explained that despite William's iron will, he had never held a sword before and his actual combat strength left much to be desired. The captain requested the knight to end the match quickly, noting that, although William seemed to know the basics, the fight needed to finish before someone started to suspect. The captain narrowed his eyes, serious, as William averted his gaze, his expression revealing insecurity. The second-level knight held his wooden sword, intrigued by William's true strength. As the referee raised 2 flags to signal the start, he silently assessed William. Deep down, if he could defeat that bunch of exiled clowns, maybe he deserved recognition even in the Order of Knights. Then, he advanced towards the second-level knight, disarming him in the blink of an eye. The referee sternly warned William about his hasty action, stating that he should wait for the signal to begin. William made a hasty bow, repeatedly apologizing, claiming to be too nervous for the fight. The father of the blonde boy mocked, stating that he was a perfect example of what not to do. The father of the brown-haired boy feigned sympathy but overflowed with sarcasm, noting that it was a common newbie mistake during his first match, adding that it was a poor performance. A drop of sweat trickled down the face of the second-level knight as he quickly turned towards the captain of the knights, who was equally perplexed by what had just occurred. The commander did not expect this at all. The captain was somewhat surprised by William's skill. When the referee raised the red flag and signaled the start of the match, he suddenly recalled William's words, remembering the boy's serious expression when he promised to become someone neither the pen nor the sword could break. Observing the duel between the second-class knight and William in front of him, the captain of the knights was amazed to see those promises materializing so quickly. Amid all this confusion, he recalled the training sessions in which he discovered a new pattern. The more he imitated William, the more he realized that the boy was shaping an impressive fencing style, with tensions, specialized techniques, and a sharp aggressiveness. William transitioned between attacks and defenses, using the opponent's strength with an unusual speed. Miley crossed her arms, eagerly waiting for William's performance, smiling as she recognized that unique fencing was exclusive to the boy. To be honest, imitating him was becoming a burden. A second-class knight frowned, thinking the boy was still not that fast. He slightly dodged William's attack while the captain of the knights watched, assessing that the strikes were not that impactful. William, gritting his teeth, fought against the knight's resistance. The two exchanged blows incessantly, showcasing not only strength but a surprising technique with every step they took. The two cut through the air, one toward the other before passing each other, and the second-class knight found himself reflecting on the determination that shone in the boy's eyes. He was making tough decisions, but each one was right. When the knight raised his sword to block what seemed like a routine strike, he felt the intensity of William's attack and realized that the boy had a ferocity and experience that left him stunned. The crowd murmured, caught up in this intense battle, questioning whether it was really just a spectacle, as both seemed so well matched in combat. Seriousness hung in the air. A second-class knight pulled his sword back, closely observing William, who had exposed some weaknesses throughout the fight. If he wanted, he could have ended everything with a single blow. Remembering the captain's warning, the knight tightened his grip around the sword when William felt intrigued to notice that his opponent was not attacking. He was holding back completely. Something about that behavior felt strange to him. The moment their eyes crossed with the captain, William understood the situation. He held his sword firmly, a bit shaky, but wanted the other to give his best. Gritting his teeth, he channeled his strength into a single strike when the knight suddenly raised his hand, surrendering, leaving William in shock. As the referee ended the match and announced that the fight was over, the audience erupted in applause and cheers of joy. The referee positioned himself between William and the knight, asking them to salute each other, while the other knights murmured, stunned by the unexpected surrender. The knight leaned his injured hand against the sword, regaining his composure and closing his eyes in internal criticism, reflecting on his performance. No, I am still not enough. Because of this, I couldn't even showcase my opponent's true abilities. In the distance, the captain of the knights watched, impressed by the boy's unexpected development. What had this boy been doing for the last month? He turned to the second-class knight, praising him for stopping at the right time and for his performance. The knight responded soberly, asserting that he was not simply acting and that in fact he would not have been able to continue, leaving the captain completely perplexed. His legs trembled as he tried to keep standing, recalling the moment when William attacked his ankles. From the beginning, the boy relentlessly targeted that area, hitting it several times before launching a series of thrusts. Controlling the fight, William advanced his blade, cutting through the air and forcing the knight to plant his left foot due to the pressure of the attacks. He made me rely solely on my left leg. The pressure on my ankle had become unsustainable, and that is what led me to inform the captain that I had lost. The blond man could not contain his criticism, observing that William had several opportunities to finish before the opponent surrendered. Had William been more decisive, victory would have been assured. Upon hearing the speculations, he looked at the young one, suggesting that the boy could have waited for a more forceful blow from his opponent. Crossing his arms, he continued while the blond man and Finney watched in shock, explaining that a bolder maneuver could open gaps for a counterattack, causing maximum damage. Even in the face of his limitations, the blond man with a skeptical expression frowned, while Finney was increasingly perplexed by it all. The young one maintained a demeanor. He quickly approached the young one and shot, "You are an idiot. What do you think you know? Stop acting like you understand everything, kid." The young one's silence left Finney petrified and drenched in sweat, remembering his own past clash with another boy. Since that confrontation, he began to feel a strange empathy towards that figure. Finney's hand trembled as he pointed at the young one who was driving him mad, and, even with that harmless air, he felt more confused with each moment. He installed his tongue and turned around, murmuring about how everyone was acting overly familiar. Yes, he squinted and made a dark comment. "You knights have training as good as Williams. Normally, they just have the interns clean instead of engaging in direct combat. So you are really lucky, you idiot, if it weren't for you. I could have taken the exam and participated in the tournament," he grumbled, looking irritably at the arena. "And why did I arrive so late? If only my family had more influence," he lamented. Before he could finish, the young man made a brilliant proposal. "Would you like to train with us? William needs partners." He shot back and turned, unable to believe it, exclaiming, "What, Lord William?" Internally, he chastised himself for letting emotion show before raising his hand and reluctantly agreeing. "All right, having someone like you will definitely lower the standards." Just as a boy with black hair approached to ask if he could join, another boy with light hair raised his hand in support. "I want to join too." Suddenly, everyone rushed towards the group, causing Feem, irritated, to wave his arms and scare them off. "I really need to strike a deal with the servant just to train with Lord William," he ruminated, while a group of brown-haired boys watched the commotion around the young man. In the distance, the boy tilted his head, murmuring about their scene, while two guys behind him argued about an insult. Just as the king let out a long yawn before the next match, 33 matches later, the trumpets played for a good while, as the brown-haired boy raised his hand and laughed. Then, the captain of the knights stepped firmly onto the field and announced that it was finally his turn. The expression on his face conveyed a certain weight of doubt as he observed the scene before his eyes. The blond boy did not miss the chance to let out a grumble, complaining about the music accompanying the fight. He realized that his opponent was already acting like a true knight, and that feeling was immediately echoed by his friend. He better keep an eye on him, thought the boy, observing the situation. Imagine how much money his father poured into this to turn the boy into a real knight. The blonde added, while the brown-haired young man finally took the floor. "Let's start by eliminating those who don't deserve to be here," he proclaimed, waving dismissively at the smiling young man. And giving the order for his ally the slave to advance, the captain of the knights could not help but furrow his brow upon noticing the rudeness of the brown-haired little boy as his father began to boast, asking those around him if he had done a good job. "Raising son, my son will tolerate no filth," he exclaimed, while the young brown-haired boy and the smiling one positioned themselves sword in hand. He licked his lips, feeling the anticipation rise. He was eager to shred his opponent, but was interrupted by the blonde, who suddenly shouted from afar, "Hey, Fim!" Fim, surprised, jumped and responded, asking what had prompted such a sudden reminder. The blonde commented that he had been paying attention to Fim's fight, and while analyzing his expression, a face of well-being became soaked in sweat upon recalling when he pointed his sword at the happy face and banished himself. "I will not accept this, you trash." The young blonde rested his chin in his hand, watching the fight and suddenly noticing something peculiar about the young man. "It seems like he's holding back his true strength," he remarked softly, continuing to observe. "Did you notice anything strange while fighting against him?" he asked. Feem stood with his mouth open, trying to process and retort his, "Strange? No way. Cut it out, you idiot." He then made an ironic speculation. "Do you think you could defeat him again in a rematch?" The young blonde responded directly. "Every time I look at him, I feel a chill in my stomach, as if he's in another dimension, you know." Feeny, with an air of disdain, did not seem to agree, and after a moment of reflection sincerely declared, "He just seems like another simpleton to me." He gestured towards the happy face, who was holding a wooden sword, and finished, "Yes, this match will clear our doubts." Sitting on the ground and watching the happy face, William shared his opinion. "Happy face, brother. It would be better to use just one sword in these elimination battles." With a serious face, he continued, "I figured this out on the first day. No matter how great your talent is, no one will value you if you do not know how to use the sword." William remembered the excitement of the knights and spoke gravely. "Give them a reason to recognize you. Show from the beginning who's in charge here." He then mentioned the new format of the test. It had been in his favor. recalling the criticisms he received from the end and others who saw Happy Face only as a slave. "This is a perfect chance to change the image he has of you," William stated, sporting a confident smile. Happy held the sword in position while his friend's words reverberated in his mind. "This arena was made for you, man." The young brown-haired man, sneering at Happy Face's posture, mocked. "Finally woke up to training, huh? This pose isn't so bad, but is that all there is?" He recalled his father's bragging, saying that the path was clear to earn 1,000,000 points. Then Happy Face, lowering the sword a bit, activated a skill that left everyone in shock. Basic sword technique. The brow of the brown-haired boy furrowed as he saw Happy Face's incredible speed. The blades collided with a bang, and the young man struggled to dodge the attack. After that, the boy, with an angry look, pulled out his sword, channeling all his strength as he prepared for a counterattack. Happy Face, however, remained calm, analyzing every movement, until both launched themselves to carry out a simultaneous attack. It was when Happy Face dealt a decisive blow that paralyzed his opponent. The young brown-haired man, now with a wound on his forehead, began to bleed. The crowd fell into a tense silence as the knight captain watched, completely focused, the fight. The second-place knight mentally praised Happy Face's perfect execution. William, in the background, boasted about thinking he would get a 10, while Feeney, with wide eyes, could hardly believe what he was seeing. "Is it over?" exclaimed Feeney, while the blonde was still shocked by how the fight ended. The father of the young brown-haired man was pale, nervous, and tense. A referee with the yellow flag in hand announced that the combat should continue. William's eyes widened, surprised by the referee's decision, while the knight captain muttered curses. "What the hell? What is this guy doing?" The referee, soaked in sweat, reflected in his mind how much he had been swayed by bribes. Now he was pale and looking for an excuse to let the fight continue, trying to ensure the young man would win. He justified himself by saying he was distracted, before he turned to the young man with brown hair and noticed that, even after taking a hit, his bonus points would still secure his victory. He said, "Get your butt up, man," he murmured, to which the young man with brown hair looked at his own hand and shot back. "You bastard!" Raising his sword with force, he shouted, "I was just distracted, now you'll see what I'm capable of," the boy declared in a burst of courage. But William's expression hardened. He wondered if they would really move on as if nothing had happened. The young man with brown hair was furious, his teeth clenched in the presence of William. "This villain only knows how to do this," he thought, convinced that William had incited his disciple to act at that moment. "Now try to dodge this," he barked, his mouth twisting. "A single cut is all it takes to end this." However, it wasn't long before he cursed like a cornered animal when Happy Face's blade hit him squarely in the back. "You worm," he shouted as onlookers watched in curiosity and astonishment, admiring Happy Face's skill. "The kid is good," they murmured in whispers. "He doesn't look like a gladiator at all." Consumed by humiliating rage, the young man raised his sword with determination and shouted, "I'll show you a technique that goes beyond your wildest dreams. Watch closely." It was then that the young man with brown hair froze upon realizing Happy Face's blade at his throat. He tried to evade but was hit at a vital point, causing the referee to panic and demand that they stop. With his belt slipping, he wiped the sweat from his face and requested that they adjust the equipment and restart. Thinking about what the boy was doing instead of simply finishing the fight, William observed the battle closely, noting that the skill difference was so great that Happy Face could dominate that duel with just a wooden stick. Happy Face, as usual, exceeded all expectations, making it clear to everyone that victory was his, while June, the father of the young man with brown hair, trembled in disbelief. "No, this can't be happening," he stammered as Happy Face leaned his head toward the opponent. Perplexed about why they didn't end the fight, he assessed the condition of the other man and noticed that injuries like that would be fatal in a real combat. Before closing his eyes and finally speaking, "I heard you were among the best gladiators." The young brown-haired man was perplexed by the taunt from Happy Face. "But look, no matter how you see it, you're still at rock bottom," they told Happy Face, causing the other to explode with fury while recalling the time he watched the training sessions with William. Happy Face said, "I've spent the last month paying attention to everyone, including you, and you really have a fighting spirit, natural confidence, and good physical constitution." He remembered the man's arrogant expression in combat, something rare that probably made others surrender or jump to hasty conclusions whenever they faced him, leading Happy Face to smile. "Even if they could easily defeat you," he asserted, making the young man's eyes widen in horror as he realized it was the same thing that had been said during his own fight. Feeling that he had received clemency, the young brown-haired man charged in a blind fury, shouting for Happy Face to shut up, while Happy Face calmly raised his blade. The young man stopped, his face paling, while Happy Face, with an almost monstrous aura, announced, "Your fighting spirit is now broken," provoking a desperate and shouted attack from the transients. At that moment, Happy Face delivered a decisive blow, his blade passing swiftly before the terrified eyes of the young man. William, stunned, realized that Happy Face had planned every detail, the timing, positioning, and attack since he began to taunt his opponent. Stunned by the destruction of his own weapon, the young brown-haired man stood watching as Happy Face drove his sword into the ground, leaning on the blade to make a proposal. If you want, I can grant this first match to you, Happy Face offered. Just as the referee raised the flags to make a formal announcement, Happy Face is the winner, he shouted, while Happy Face spoke to the crowd in a somber tone, warning, they will never treat you like a slave again. Continuing to do so would be a disgrace to them and the entire cavalry. Then he sat scratching his neck while wondering if it was really necessary for William to say all of this. Winning was not enough. He had not only shown his strength. Happy Face said, William, I will ensure that they understand that your power is rooted in responsibility. This represents restraint and the will of a true knight. If you don't understand this, just look at the people around you. Happy looked at the crowd, his eyes widening as he witnessed the positive reaction from the knights, each one moved by his display, with the thunderous applause from the crowd now recognizing him. Happy turned to William, opening a genuine smile. William gave a thumbs up in approval, and suddenly a hand rose from the crowd challenging. I also wish to challenge Happy Face, since my previous opponent has withdrawn, declared the young blonde firmly. As the captain of the knights watched and assessed the situation, he thought that this evaluation fight had turned into a cauldron of confusion, grinding his teeth in silent fury as he cast a glance at the young brown-haired boy's father who was cursing the organizers while leaving the venue. He then directed his gaze to the referee who nervously still held the flags, realizing that the judges' panel had been bribed. He looked at the bold demand of the young blonde, questioning if everyone had lost their minds. As he slowly calmed down, the young blonde stepped onto the field next to Happy Face, and the captain observed the expectation in his own eyes and in William's, while the other boy eagerly awaited the next round. The young blonde narrowed his eyes with determination, and the referee began to sweat cold. The king gestured for them to continue, and the young blonde turned to Happy Face, admitting that he knew that this one's strength was much more than just an empty reputation. His skill level is truly unpredictable, he declared firmly, proposing a genuine challenge, not realizing the full weight of his own words. William began to draw an X in the air for smile, asking him to attack with all his might, leaving the end completely stunned, questioning if that intensity was really within him. It was as if he was facing a new version of smile. As they crossed their swords under the watchful eyes of the crowd in that academy, happiness was not only recognized but had become a source of inspiration. The young blonde, holding the sword firmly, decided to advance, launching the blade at Smiley. Raising his sword, he prepared to block the attack, his pupils reflecting the blade while the opponent lifted his weapon. Regardless of the direction of the strike, Smiley dodged agilely, leaving William locked in the duel, his eyes never straying for a second. There was no denying the difference between them. Each movement was a spectacle in itself, surpassing the level of a mere learner. The time had come to end this dispute. Smiley suddenly advanced. While the young blonde silently assessed the situation, he was on the defensive against attacks, and his strikes were worthy of applause. The young blonde felt a pulse of excitement, and an involuntary smile appeared on his lips as he realized he was facing a rare talent. With confidence in his superiority, he delivered a final strike without hesitation. Smiley firmly raised his sword to block the attack with such perfect technique that it left the young blonde stunned. Smiley's eyes took on a threatening expression, worthy of the shadows of night. A crack echoed, causing the referee to lean in and ask the young blonde if he was okay. "Are you all right?" the referee asked, as Smiley leaned on his sword and claimed to have delivered a strong blow. This provoked a scream of panic from the young blonde, who clutched his neck. Smiley then turned and explained it was a joke, stating that he had only fainted momentarily. Acknowledging his failed final move, the young blonde understood that after Smiley released the blade, he was hit with a blow to the neck, leaving him wide-eyed. As Smiley examined the mark on the young blonde's neck, he praised his performance, asserting that his movements were truly perfect. He closed his eyes and explained that the crux of the problem was the repetition of the same techniques, noting that each stance was identical to those he practiced every day. It was common to repeat what they already knew, but in real combat, death often comes from an unexpected strike, facing a technique that could not be foreseen. The young blonde lowered his head. Letting out a long and heavy sigh, he expressed feeling that everything he had built was being destroyed. But Smiley corrected him, assuring that it was not a collapse, but a breaking of boundaries. "Look at the big picture," Smiley said, leaving the young blonde paralyzed, the two staring at each other in a tense atmosphere. He scratched his head and apologized to William for having fought his way, to which William reacted by saying that his first fight was more than enough. "Ah, I found a perfect opponent for you," Smiley added, causing William's confusion as he excitedly pointed to a group of blonde knights. "Wait, now there are more people in this fight." A dark note on the paper confirmed that Happy Face was in the evaluation match. The captain of the knight leaned his hands on the table, exuding a satisfied smile as the second-class knight watched him. He then averted his gaze, smiling in relief, when Winnie appeared with the bag, reminding that the evaluation day was approaching. She noted that she needed to go out to buy meat for the boy, and a vendor greeted them warmly. He, while holding the edge of his skirt, asked eagerly, "What should I wear on evaluation day? I need to cheer for him." William's mother replied that, in fact, he was not participating in the evaluation, but the girl jumped in, clarifying that she was referring to Happy Face. Saga looked closely at a piece of cloth in front of him, silently reading what was written. The day is near, sharpen your blade and prepare for the murder. The old body collector approached Saga, holding a shovel, and asked what was written there. He turned and replied that it was just a piece of cloth he found at work. Saga, curious, questioned what was happening. The old body collector replied that it was nothing much. He then lifted a necklace with a skull pendant and talked about the mind. When you spend more time with the dead than the living, sometimes they bother you. This is a charm to protect you from them. The old body collector handed it to Saga, saying he used it in his youth and it was a reward for his work. Put on the necklace, he concluded. Thank you, it's exactly what I needed. The old man passed by Saga and, what you really need are your salaries. Work is work, so prepare yourself and follow me. Then an exhausted knight came running and reported that an assassin had attacked, asking everyone to go to the kingdom to report the danger. Red Eyes remained silent. The impatient knight stared at him and shouted an order, thinking he would hasten. He quickly received a cold glare from Red Eyes, who had a firm expression. Karina was right behind the fallen knight. She picked up the sword and boldly declared that she was ready to face the king alone. About 50 days ago, he was shackled and curled up in a dark prison cell when the leader of the exiled bandits was delivered to the guards. Red Eyes held the green-eyed man in the air, starting an interrogation. Who brought the members of the royal family to the arena? He asked, and the man revealed that it was all the work of Lucas Tan. But the situation changed quickly. Red Eyes did not believe him. He struck relentless blows with his weapon, making it clear that he doubted the suspect's answer. And then, to further spice up the situation, a horrific figure appeared. Lucas Tan, with a smile that could freeze fire, presented himself sheepishly before the king. Interestingly, he ended up confessing to a crime he did not commit in a desperate act to calm the monarch's wrath, using his own death as a trump card to resolve the matter. Red Eyes approached the green-eyed man and whispered that, although the situation had been resolved, they would not give up on finding the true culprit. Intrigued, the green-eyed man asked why Red Eyes and his group were still on the case, since the king had deemed everything resolved. Why are you still pursuing this mystery? In the next moment, he received a violent blow to the stomach. Red Eyes acted as if he had seen nothing, commenting that the green-eyed man knew that he and his group were not part of the Order of the Night. He growled the explanation, telling that he had a plan to exterminate the royal family, but the bandits ruined everything. Red Eyes remembered his infiltration among the knights, revealing that his identity was at stake because another person was also interested in the royals. He hid behind some boxes while soldiers searched. Search everywhere for whoever is guilty, he said, holding a branch and looking out the window. The old body collector and Saga watched the body lying on the ground, reflecting. If my side hadn't diverted the investigation to the true body, the situation would have been catastrophic. Remembering at that moment, the red-eyed man murmured that if something like that happened again, the entire assassination plan would fall apart. The green-eyed man was shocked to realize how many assassins were everywhere. He then silently questioned himself, thinking that the kingdom was already rotting even without his interference. The red-eyed man's gaze locked directly onto the green-eyed man, pressing, "Tell the truth, if it wasn't you who hunted the royal family." After a prolonged silence, the green-eyed man finally revealed the name of one person. It was Karina who did this. The red-eyed man examined him closely. The truth was that Karina did not belong to the exiled criminals, but was a stranger who wanted to join them only to eliminate the king. Karina, with an air of boredom, crossed her arms and told the green-eyed man, "Let me in on this, I can be the leader, I'll position myself discreetly." She was hiding outside the city, gathering information. As soon as she got what she wanted, she broke in, kidnapping a member of the royal family, pulling him brutally and dragging him through the sewers until he went bald, selling the poor soul to the arena while the man screamed, claiming to be of royalty. Someone shouted that he should go back to searching for his ancestors in a pigsty, calling him filthy scum. Undaunted, the green-eyed man commented to his companion that the situation was really strange, while the red-eyed man wondered why Karina would target the royal family. Was it revenge, a mission, or was she a spy? Where did she come from? Even upon hearing the questioning, the green-eyed man, he admitted that she had not made anything clear. Karina replied, "It seems you really need a reason to kill a pig. If you are hungry, just go ahead and do it." With a provocative look, she let the words escape as she walked with her messy hair, causing Red Eyes to watch silently. With his hand inside his clothes, he indifferently commented that he should have dealt with Karina before. To think that all this would culminate in an incident, he said as she stared at him, demanding to know who he was and how he knew him. With a quick movement, the man with red eyes pulled a blade from under the cloak and threw it in her direction. Karina avoided the blade with her sword, realizing that the artifact did not belong to the knights. As the dagger buried itself in the fresh grass of the place, her eyes narrowed in contemplation, wondering if he really was a knight. When he swung a chain towards her, Karina deftly dodged, realizing that her suspicion was on its way to being confirmed. She cast a gaze of increasing interest, challenging him to show what he was truly capable of. Red Eyes, surprised by her bravery, saw Karina slicing through the links of the chain and striking the mask that covered his face. He observed her countenance and then questioned the scars she bore. wondering if what she did was self-harm. Karina, with the blade aimed at his throat, emphasized the question of whether he really was not part of the Order of Knights, and answered clearly, "We have a common goal." These words left Karina in shock, repeating them in her mind. No one but the exiled bandits would be seeking the royal family. She pondered the possibility of other hunters besides herself. The Red Eyes then warned that if she continued to cause commotion, it might become impossible to annihilate the royals, as security would increase and defenses would become stricter. Karina's reaction was a disdainful smile, challenging him, "And do you really think you can?" He firmly retorted that the assassination of the king had long been in the plans and was about to be realized, as long as she did not interfere. Karina, suspicious, lowered her gaze, reflecting for a while before admitting her lack of confidence. She raised the sword and made the demand, "Let me be part of the plan and I will stay quiet until the day of the assassination," she said, pressing the blade against her body. Karina explained that, since her boat had sunk, she needed to board the new one. Soon he averted his gaze and emphasized that this decision was up to the Grand Master. Looking at him, Karina inquired about the Grand Master. Karina found herself questioning herself as the torches danced on the mud walls. Her eyes widened like saucers when his enormous hand grabbed her, pressing her against the surface. He had a vacant look, yet said he accepted, asking her not to be afraid. Karina was in a whirlwind, her head thrown back, perplexed by the situation. The Grand Master withdrew his hand from her face and, in a deep tone, ordered her to join his son, serving as a true servant. Karina squinted and murmured the name Saga, who was all sweaty, drinking water from a cart. Then an old body collector appeared, stating that Saga was just a slave who had been there for a few days. She leaned in to look at Saga closely, asking if he was really the man's son, before approaching and whispering, "I will stay here until the day of the challenge." Under the moonlight, shadows of various people danced on the white walls as a heatedly tense discussion unfolded at a large table. "We cannot allow the match to be manipulated like this," the father of the brown-haired boy, his hands trembling with indignation. "There's no way to prevent it. No one can intervene," commented the man in the red coat. "A slave and a commoner appearing out of nowhere to duel? That is a total disrespect to the nobles. Slaves are one thing, but William is another story," agreed the man dressed in brown. "It's true, the guy is brilliant. Churches fight to see him," the black-haired man with a smile on his face. "And we cannot forget how he defeated the bandits that were attacking the nobles," said the brown-clad man, raising his hand as if he wanted to agree. "Without a doubt, he saved our skins. Now his family is on the same level as the noble houses, and what if all of this is just a grand farce?" the man in brown asked, perplexed. The father of the curly-haired boy slammed his fists on the table in anger. "And if we were all fooled, then the plan to eliminate William will unfold in this match," said another man with brown hair, trembling. "What do you mean by that? Is it all a deception?" Excited, a man exploded in fury, questioning how someone like that could succeed. The gray-haired man coldly replied that words needed to carry more responsibility. After that, his anger faded and he softened his voice by stating that his son not only misunderstood William, he knows that slave very well. A curly-haired man whispered that his name was Rapida, the champion of the arena. From there, the truth began to reveal itself about a man who did not fight and was dragging himself in pain. It seemed impossible that he could, all of a sudden, decapitate 3 mercenaries and take down an entire gang. According to the guards, William had most likely taken credit for the hunt. Meanwhile, the brown-haired man paused for a moment before sharing something interesting. "My son overheard the captain's conversation with the commander. He revealed that William had never picked up a sword in his life." "Seriously? That the fight was staged?" The father of the curly-haired boy was shocked. Someone commented that many people actually knew the slave. He did not stop and exclaimed that this guy was famous in the arena, but after nearly being eliminated by the prince's death, everyone was afraid and fell silent to avoid trouble. Then it became clear that the issue was not to expose the slave but to bring down the imposter. If they did that, the slave would easily disappear. A voice rose, asking how they could do this if he had already been knighted. "If we make a mistake, it could be considered a crime of insulting the crown." The person approached the father of the curly-haired boy and suggested teaching a kidnapping on the day of the fight. They began to discuss this strategy, where a fake bandit would kidnap the nobles and demand to fight William, and everyone would start praising William, asking him to introduce himself like before. At this point, the man gave a mischievous smile and commented that if he did not introduce himself, he would be called a coward, and if he did, he would be in trouble. The others agreed with the idea. For the sake of the nobility, the Order of Knights could not escape this. "Perfect, let's go for it." Soon the fox was beaming, jumping for joy, and shortly after, the fox began puffing up its cheeks to prepare. He made a tremendous effort to push the tree where those small fruits began to fall to the ground. He, all happy, shouted, "Look at how much there is," and off went Happy Face, just following along, grabbing the fruits at an insane speed. The two, extremely excited, went to throw the fruits into the fire that had started to blaze, consuming the peels. Meanwhile, Happy Face and he were using their feet to peel the fruits, revealing the tasty seeds. A wonderful smell began to spread, and the two looked at each other and, with big smiles on their faces, started eating until they could not take any more. Winnie watched and thanked her for helping collect the herbs. He looked back and explained that it was no problem at all because the truth was she just wanted to play with Happy Face. Glancing at the two, Winnie smiled, thinking there was a happy atmosphere while all the leaves fell around them. And thus the two girls had fun under the green trees, where he said the colors were falling like rain. Winnie began to realize that they really did look quite alike. Out of nowhere, a voice shouted, "Little girl, let's go home, your mother is here waiting for you." Realizing this, she waved to them saying she would run ahead. Winnie, in turn, remembered the little girl. "Okay, come back carefully, alright?" She was almost out of sight but turned her face to promise that the next day was the departure day and that she would wear a cool outfit to cheer for Happy Face. In the meantime, both fell into a thoughtful silence. After a little while, Winnie was the first to break the mood, asking, "Tomorrow is the departure, how do you feel?" Happy, with a sparkle in his eyes, confirmed, "I'm good, I'm really happy that everyone will be there supporting me." Then Winnie, with an explicit concern, questioned, "But what about in the order of nights? You're alright, right? With everything that happened, but is this really what you want?" She exploded, somewhat apprehensive, that he had lived his entire life amidst wars and that the Order of Knights was a place where that was also taught. Her voice sounded exciting and melancholic, thinking that now that he was recovered and had no reason to fight, everything seemed to be crumbling. Happy Face, however, chose to maintain a firm optimism. He stood strong. "This place is very different from the arena." Picking up a stick to explain, he said that in the arena, regardless of what one wanted, people still left remembering the sad things from the past. He reflected on how even those who had once scorned him departed with a look of confusion. This left everything with a taste of futility, but he smiled and affirmed that here everyone was alive, giving him a chance to learn and a future together. He launched into an emotional declaration of his love for that place, feeling at ease after going through so much anxiety. It seemed that things were going well because there would be no lethal conflicts within the order. That night, and as he remembered something, Winnie murmured that the war had ended during her father's time, thus beginning 20 years of peace, a peace that did not come easily, achieved with many sacrifices. Suddenly, William got up and pulled him back home, because Grandma had already cooked some meat. The scene changes, showing the next day, the day of the competition, where several knights were gathered in a little house. A voice called out, asking who was there. A man entered and announced that there was a letter left since the day Lucas passed away, leaving Willie perplexed. The man, noticing their astonishment, asked if there was a slave named Happy Face around. Winnie turned and whispered to Grandma if this involved Lucaston. Grandma confirmed, nodding her head. The old man was Happy Face's former master and the owner of the arena. The man began to introduce himself, explaining that he came from a territory that lay beyond the empire. After a long journey, he realized that the boy had been registered as a slave of the church, but had ended up being sold from a slave market to a farm. Winnie, hearing this, was firm. Happy was no longer a slave. She explained that he was now a squire, and that she would offer to deliver the letter to him. But the old man hesitated and made a gesture as if to say no. He insisted it was to meet in person and read the letter only to Happy. Before slowly walking away from Winnie's house, with an hour to departure, the crowd began to murmur, asking if it had begun, noting that everyone was there because of William. At the same time, the king looked around, asking where the princes and princesses were. The queen quickly told him not to worry, as the duke had gone to fetch them and they would arrive soon. Meanwhile, the captain of the knights tapped William, telling him not to be nervous. The boy nodded seriously, trying to maintain his composure. In some corner, the whole crowd had already taken their positions and was ready. Some curly-haired blondes were also there, ready to watch. She, all happy, waved at him while Winnie's grandfather commented that he looked amazing. In a distant corner, the scene shifted to between some bushes. There, Karina was watching what was unfolding, realizing that the duel was a step away from starting. A brown-haired guy who was tied up tried to ask a question about the other nobles who were there. A guy holding him explained the situation, revealing that they were actually in a shelter, just pretending to have been kidnapped. Outside, Luke Reston's subordinates stared intently at the stage, noting that all the attention was focused there and not on the crowd that was out at night. Meanwhile, in a silent tower, with a perfect view of the event, a servant was watching the movement and soon informed the prince that the match was about to begin. He asked if the prince was ready, but then his eyes widened in shock upon seeing the high priest kill the prince. With a swift motion, the high priest threw the dagger and sent the servant away. Immediately, blood began to flow on the room's floor as the high priest finally left the place. Back to the duel, Karina recalled things from the past and provoked Saga, noticing that he was following her. Since the day William was attacked, she looked at him with distrust and wondered what a guy like him would have to do with the attack he suffered on the farm. In a flash, Karina questioned whether he had become a knight. Saga stared at the crowd and brushed off his thoughts, commenting that the man had been promoted for anything but honest merits. Karina then smiled, thinking it made sense since he didn't seem like that kind of guy. Saga, in a serious tone, made a confession to her. He revealed that reliable files indicated that she had been responsible for William's death, but she had only stepped back. Curious, Karina inquired why he thought that way. Saga reflected a bit, trying to understand the gravity of her previous actions. Moreover, William not only reported the incident but also accepted a reward, and he argued that there was no way to say that William was out of the game. Those words left Karina deep in thought as she murmured something about it simply being her way, which left Saga completely at a loss. By way of a joke, Karina said her hobby was to call him a cowardly dog. This made Saga dive into his own reflections, wondering about this so-called hobby. But when Karina turned to leave, Saga intervened, reminding her that it was time to act, and wanting to know where she was going since their plan was to watch the escape route. But his eyes widened when he noticed Karina kill a man down below, jumping from the tree and asking if she had lost her mind. Karina, calmly adjusting her mask, explained that she needed to eliminate all the mercenaries in the employ of the nobles who planned to cause a stir. Saga sternly reminded her that their goal was to eliminate the royals and warned her not to act alone. But Karina, determined, cut him off and said he had no right to talk, considering he had tried to kill her before. Then, she leaned in to whisper that not understanding the target was his fault. With a freezing look, he commented that if the goal was truly to kill the royals, they would need spies, not assassins indiscriminately. Karina questioned why attack in broad daylight in dining halls and alleys full of beggars, if the intention was simply murder. Doing this in busy places felt like a massacre. Like a light switching on in her mind, she realized that the plan was to cause the highest number of deaths in that short span of time. Saga warned once again, feeling that she was going too far, and asked her not to speculate. Karina sarcastically compared her to a naive child who only knew how to obey daddy. She then handed over a paper she had stolen from her comrades and after a moment looked at him with a mischievous smile. Karina asked if his orders mentioned a day of slaughter and noticing Saga's absolute shock, teased that they probably didn't mention that. He coldly turned to leave, remembering that his father might be deceiving him to take control of the kingdom. Saga's expression darkened as he lost himself in his thoughts, while Karina whispered her goodbye. Before the scene changed, she drew her sword, ready for action, oblivious to the danger. The group began to hurry, as things were about to get intense. Karina's expression grew grim as they continued their conversation. The brown-haired man spoke nervously about whether they only needed to kill William to escape from prison, since the lives of the nobles were at stake. He assured that if they eliminated William and disappeared, the rest of the mess would resolve itself, making Karina smile at the mention of William. As the brown-haired man hurriedly whistled, the scene shifted to another corner, where a man was writhing in stomach pain, questioning whether what he ate was spoiled. The king looked around and noticed that everyone was late, while a nearby guard was giving instructions to a colleague, and ordered the soldier to take the man to the portable restroom. While the poor guy wondered if the boss had been generous with the ingredients, he continued groaning in pain and lamenting the distance to the restrooms, until the man with red eyes suggested that an isolated spot would be better, which he agreed to. But suddenly a figure appeared and strangled the brown-haired man until he turned blue, while the man with red eyes seemed completely oblivious. A voice from the training field shouted for William to come down, claiming that exiled bandits had returned to seek revenge. The group entered the scene, ensuring that they had kidnapped all the nobles, demanding that William come down and confront them. They threatened the lives of the nobles, and a gray-haired man added that all the aristocrats were hostages in a cave. He said he had barely escaped to deliver the news, while another man shouted that they were just insignificant remnants for William's journey. He urged him to act like a hero, as he had when he defeated 100 enemies before. William cast a worried glance at the captain of the knights. A cry for help echoed nearby, as the brown-haired man made a ridiculous horror act, looking petrified. Someone joked about his acting, and even those pretending to be enemies were embarrassed by the performance, which seemed like trash. Thinking of killing them all, this is bad, thought the captain of the knights, realizing that the situation looked like a conspiracy by the nobility. Anyway, they were wielding real weapons and causing trouble. It was clearly an assassination attempt, and the commoners there couldn't help but whisper about what was going on during the grand ceremony. The captain warned William that he didn't need to come down as his majesty would take care of it. And as the captain had predicted, the king roared with an angry expression, demanding to know who had the audacity to make such a mockery. The curly-haired group was in shock, while Karina let out a long sigh, tired of watching everything because of William. She made a decision about these idiots. The determined Karina launched a powerful attack right next to him. The guy, in complete panic, began shouting incessantly, untie me now, you idiot." But Karina, calm, tilted her head and pointed her blade at them, questioning if they still thought it was just a joke. "Make a decision quickly, you pigs." With the attention growing, she demanded that they call William, or the result would be a real massacre. William, standing there, observed like lightning each movement, while the smiling-faced man maintained a foolish expression. With her thoughts remaining a mystery, Karina put on a cold smile and declared that the slaughter would begin. It was better for the guys to hurry up, something that the man with red eyes silently confirmed, being exactly the chaos he had anticipated. And so he ordered to take the lives of all the fugitives and ensure that the royal family was exterminated before the day of slaughter began. Karina, with a piercing gaze, stared at William, who maintained an emotionless expression. Suddenly, a thought contacted her mind, the memory of the nightmares that haunted him at night. Many times he woke up cold sweats to see his home, only to witness a horrific scene. The 3 heads she had decapitated were in fact those of his loved ones. From the terror of that nightmare, William stared at his family in shock. At that moment, Karina coldly murmured that, for her, revenge was synonymous with eliminating an entire lineage. And while he was consumed by despair over her being free, waking up petrified at night to check if his relatives were okay, every time William tried to focus on how to become stronger, even when his body felt on the brink of collapse, he refused to give up. "Happy, let's do this again," he proclaimed, returning to the present. When William picked up a sword from one side, he solemnly commented on how fortunate it was that she had come for him and not for his family. In light of this situation, the captain of the knights advised the king to withdraw, but the king promptly refused, stating that someone would die even if he left. "As always, I'm just making a choice," he said with a smile, hoping that this choice would be the right one. The captain of the knights furrowed his brow, watching William, not understanding what the boy was thinking, but upon seeing the boy advance without hesitation, an idea illuminated the captain's mind. Had William truly prepared for this fight? He had heard rumors about the young man, saying that if someone lived a lie, the true self would eventually be exposed. Back then, his opinion seemed like youthful stubbornness, but now his convictions were changing. Now that stubbornness seemed to be on the most certain path. As the blonde man looked in shock at the smiling expression next to him, Karina was perplexed by what was happening. Suddenly, she lunged forward, cutting a tuft of hair from the brown-haired man, before pointing her finger at William. "With one more step or movement, I will decapitate all the captured nobles," she said, causing the brown-haired man to scream in total panic, pleading to be let go and for everything to be called off. But instantly, he was silenced with a punch to the face, leaving the man dazed, while the hooded figure issued a warning coldly. "Shut up! Don't you realize what's going on?" he whispered, moving closer to the brown-haired man to confide that this game would turn into a harsh reality. The hooded man then glared at the brown-haired man, informing him that now that their lives were at stake, they would truly be kidnapped. The 3 nobles were in shock at that scene, while the gray-haired man started to argue with the others beside him about the chaos that seemed endless. A companion agreed, saying that at that moment he would certainly be killed, which made the gray-haired man plead with the noble. "Why did you hire real exiled bandits?" he asked. But the man couldn't explain, that it was unbelievable and he had no idea at all. Drenched in cold sweat, he wondered what the hell was happening. Meanwhile, a nearby knight was giving instructions for others to follow him quietly, helping to rescue the kidnapped nobles, taking the gray man away, asking him not to make a sound. Meanwhile, the gray-haired man continued to wonder if this was really the right decision. The blonde man placed a hand on the masked man's shoulder, advising him to stay out of the fight, warning that if all the nobles died because of him, the burden of that responsibility would not fall solely on him. William turned and assured firmly that he would win and that there was no need to worry. The masked man, observing that attentively, thought that William's skills had indeed progressed a lot in that situation. He felt that the boy could barely show half of his true talent there, as his hands trembled incessantly. This was the first battle for life or death against a rival who had already surpassed him, leaving him paralyzed by fear. Karina couldn't help but suppress a mocking smile. "What's your problem? I remember my puppy always wagging its tail and trembling," she scoffed, intensifying the mockery towards William. "Do you think you went too far trying to be the hero?" she asked, making him shout in frustration. "Shut up. I will end you here and now." "What a marvelous thing," she said while raising her sword, adding, "Very well, then I will have some fun with you." Although William lunged with fierce attacks, Karina maintained a firm defense. He then directed his blade towards her lower body, but Karina took the opportunity to deliver a kick that made him stagger backward, his head spinning. However, he quickly recovered and lunged toward Karina. That's when their face-to-face confrontation began. With a pale expression, William tried to stay calm, realizing that his first strike had been blocked and that he needed to create a strategy for a counterattack. But Karina seemed to read his thoughts, making him even more uncertain. He quickly assumed a defensive position to block her strike, but Karina, in a tone almost teasing, warned William that he needed to dodge, leaving the boy completely dizzy and confused. Soon after, Karina launched an unexpected attack, and upon withdrawing her sword, gently stated that she would have killed William had she not alerted him. "I have no intention of killing you," she said while William glared at her with an expression full of rage. Happy Face watched the combat closely as the blades clashed. William gritted his teeth, struggling against Karina's attack, who wore an almost disdainful, amused smile. He tried to retaliate, swinging his sword in a counterattack. At that moment, a wave of hopelessness washed over William, and he looked up at the sky, realizing that his attempts were futile and that death awaited him. Karina, on the other hand, adjusted her hair, saying, "My little one, deep down you are still just a frightened little puppy." While William remained frozen with his blade in hand, Karina made sure to reassure him, stating that she wouldn't kill him. The blonde, who was nearby, began to react. As soon as William prepared to counterattack, Happy Face advanced silently, while Karina shot William a grave look, encouraging him to strike. The masked man, with a crooked smile, was heading toward the stands when William had his momentary hesitation. His eyes became determined, and he quickly attacked Karina, catching her by surprise and pushing her back. He then proclaimed with a grim expression that even his fear had been part of a plan, leaving Karina collapsed on the ground, her hands stained with blood. After the attack, the crowd began to chant his name, "William, William, William." Karina, completely stunned, couldn't believe what had just happened. She pondered whether someone who had trembled with fear could truly have the courage to attack her. Realizing that he was willing to sacrifice himself, while murmuring about past battles, he said something like, "I've seen many who were full of confidence and underestimated their opponents." William, with a resolute look, replied that he knew how to seize every opportunity in such confrontations. As Happy Face followed him, getting closer and fixing a piercing gaze on William, Karina looked up and complained about the headache that tormented her. In the surroundings, hooded figures began to shout in frenzy. "Damn it, what's happening?" shouted a brown-haired man for freedom, while the hooded figure argued that they were not ordinary exiles, but were acting under the orders of the nobility. The nobles, terrified, demanded that the king execute them quickly, claiming that honor meant nothing to these men, pointing out their failure to defeat the enemy. The hooded man, in a furious tone, retorted, calling them traitors and reminding them of the pact they had sealed. He shouted that the order was to eliminate William, not foreseeing the twist that the situation would take. The noble growled that it was all just a scam and lies, while the brown-haired man wept amid the growing attention. The king watched the chaos. He inquired about what was happening, and the captain of the knights, in a respectful tone, reported that something was very wrong, informing that the prince, the princess, and the queen had not yet returned. With horror, the king took a deep breath, fearing that the worst had already happened. Benedico, the captain, demanded the location of the troops and their commander, leading a knight to promptly step forward with a report. He explained that the commander had taken the men to rescue the kidnapped nobles, and the captain ordered an immediate recall. Receiving the news of the imminent disaster, the captain dispatched the knight. As a white dove flew over the distance, the bird spotted a staggering figure in a cave, where a knight named Hector was checking on his superior. Victor asked if the commander was well as a silhouette approached, but his curiosity turned to shock upon seeing the figure. The stunned knight saw that only one survivor remained and rushed to the commander to find out what had happened. With a serious expression, the commander revealed that the exiled bandits were not responsible. In fact, everything had been schemed by someone. Observing the scene of the massacre, the knight questioned how so many soldiers had been defeated and where the killers had hidden. The commander retorted that none had survived, and when the knight asked if everyone had fled, he insisted that there was no time to lose. They needed to go back and warn the others about the approaching danger. Meanwhile, Karina looked at William and called him by name. She gently warned him that the real danger was closer than he could imagine, and soon that place would be devoid of life. William, stunned, stared at Karina as she, sweating from pain, admitted that she had tried to save him because she cared for him. When William questioned about others, Karina smiled slightly and confirmed that the exiled bandits had already been eliminated. She emphasized that he had destroyed the arena and expelled the exiles, but that a threatening ghost had emerged in his path. This new threat made the previous chaos seem insignificant, and William questioned the meaning behind her mysterious words. Karina coldly declared that the massacre had already begun. At the same moment, the captain was asking a nearby soldier about the commander. Suddenly, the soldier attacked the captain, while Karina continued her dark prophecy, stating that the king would soon perish, even after having lost both hands in defense of his sovereign. The captain, in an intense struggle, saw Karina, Rick with disdain, foreseeing that everyone would follow him into death. William watched in horror as events unfolded, while the masked man seemed oblivious and the citizens in despair below went into a frenzy. Amid the deafening noise, a man cried out for weapons, but was caught off guard by a violent and sudden attack. A crowd screamed for help. Fina looked on in terror with wide eyes as the people around her were systematically slaughtered. A white-haired man called out in the end, urging them to stay alert and watch everyone closely, because a traitor was hiding among them. A desperate citizen pleaded with a knight for salvation, and the soldiers urged them to run fast towards him. Just seconds later, that man treacherously killed the knight who was guiding them, and then looked up frantically, proclaiming the dawn of a new era. In the vicinity, Happy Face watched the tragedy unfold, until his attention was diverted to Winnie and her family battling several villains. He rushed to their aid, while Karina, lying on the ground, begged William to flee, with a hooded man approaching him who was terrified. Happy Face launched a thunderous blow but soon turned alarmed upon noticing a new attack, throwing himself to shield himself, disregarding his own safety. William appeared and eliminated the assailant before he could reach her. As Winnie's family managed to escape, the knight captain carried the king on his back, pleading for his majesty to stay awake. Suddenly, a chain emerged, binding the knight captain's arm, tying it in such a way that he couldn't free himself. This left the captain bewildered, as the man with red eyes from before was responsible for stopping him. Making a cold declaration, the man with red eyes commanded the knight captain to accept the fall of the kingdom. But the captain, without even blinking, stood there admiring the burning buildings in the distance, watching the smoke rise and realizing the chaos unfolding behind him. Determined to fight, the captain finally understood the gravity of the situation. This was not just a band of random assassins, it was an army of traitors who had managed to infiltrate the kingdom unnoticed. The man with red eyes, audacious, proclaimed that they were all united by fate, declaring his love for their master, no matter what happened. Even the guy on the ground added that they were only waiting for the day their master would arrive to fill the land with blood. The king observed the fallen man and, perceiving the captain's confusion, began to explain everything calmly. He revealed that they were part of a religious cult of the war era, founded long before he became known as a knight. They believed in a demonic entity of war that promised to end all conflicts and bring a new world order. They saw the immense power of the demon as a sign of God's will, and with each empire that fell, the survivors united to prepare for its arrival. But the demon disappeared, and the king confessed that he thought the knight, now an exiled bandit, was finished because of him. The captain questioned whether the king had discredited the legend, but the king shook his head, stating that he knew the truth. When he received the news, he was certain it was indeed the devil, as one man had decimated an entire squad. He then decided to exile the survivor to hide the scent of blood, for the knight wanted to continue fighting. The king, in making the knight a liar, now remembered this with a somber expression and profound regret. He explained that the existence of the devil was a taboo known only among kings and popes, which is why it was easy but terribly risky. With a serious expression he continued, saying that he needed to act, for the kingdom faced destruction if the demon were to reappear after the war. He reinforced the walls and exterminated anyone who might have ties to the demonic entity. King Christie lamented the pride of having his kingdom as one of the safest in the region. With all this safety, they made themselves targets for cults, who chose their kingdom as a sacrifice to invoke the devil, planting seeds during peace. Aga, listening to everything, realized that the apparent madness of the king was in fact a man who only sought peace. And, looking at the enemy, he noticed that the true evil ones were the devil worshippers. Taking a glance at the sky, he reflected on the judgments and salvations he had carried out, believing them to be divine orders. He reviewed everything he had previously thought was a just punishment. Saga finally understood that each act had been to invoke that demon who had disappeared. Could this being really be so powerful as to rival God? Reflecting on past events, he questioned whether his father had hidden this whole truth all along. Just then the man with red eyes turned and shot, "Saga, go to the castle now, the high priest is waiting for you." He wanted Saga to witness that moment, being there, promising they would eliminate the remaining survivors before following him. Saga averted his gaze in silence, lost in his thoughts, while the king looked up, revealing sadness and remorse. This made him lower his head thoughtfully, and begin to walk towards the place where he would meet the high priest, with heavy and uncertain steps, as the brutal massacre happened behind him. Suddenly Winnie's image appeared in his mind, bringing back memories of him saving her, making him stop immediately. Memories of the old gravedigger returned, reminding him that the reward for his hard work would protect him from the dead. Saga stepped on a human skull but moved forward as if crossing a path filled with corpses. He held the item the gravedigger had given him, while the voice of the high priest echoed in his mind, reminding him that this mission was his initiation rite. Contain your emotions and accept everything. A dark atmosphere spread throughout the tower. A figure opened the door silently, and upon seeing the new visitor, the high priest revealed what he had been waiting for. Saga simply lowered his head and gently closed the door. "Do you have the courage to face the high priest?" he inquired. "If that was the plan for a true world, as your father spoke since you were young." Descending slowly, the high priest confirmed that Saga's acceptance into their ranks was inevitable, indeed predestined. Making Saga softly whisper the word "we," Saga then looked at the high priest, anxious, and inquired if they were worshippers of the devil, to which the man without hesitation affirmed. Upon hearing this, Saga closed his eyes tightly, saddened, and confessed that he dared not look. Before thinking of sharing his concerns, he commented that his father would certainly achieve his goals, as even he, an apostle, had not realized that the followers had such power. The high priest patted his shoulder to comfort him, assuring that even greater things were coming and that they should prepare for a new world. The high priest wondered why the boy seemed so trembling, since everything had ended, and questioned the reason for Saga's fear, leading him to close his eyes and explain what was on the other side of the door. The bodies were screaming and banging on the door as if they wanted to break it down, and he felt they were truly trying to force it open. The high priest furrowed his brow in concentration and then stared at the door in silence. Without words for a moment, he turned his gaze back to Saga, who timidly said that the talisman held the dead, but the man quickly calmed him, assuring him that there were no bodies. He ordered Saga to destroy it, but the young man, still trembling, refused, fearing that the dead would pull him in, causing the high priest to judge that Saga had still not freed himself from his weakness and was merely living a hallucination caused by terror. He ripped the amulet from the boy's neck, threw it on the ground and trampled it, before instructing Saga to look at the door again, stating that now only silence remained for the dead. Obedient, Saga turned his head to face the door, where he saw a black liquid leaking, while the passage seemed to suddenly open and a terrifying order of bodies flooded inside. This made Saga panic, screaming as the dead advanced toward him. The high priest, sensing something, quickly forgot what he was thinking, turning his gaze to the figure that had just entered. It was the Smile, holding a chain and emitting a dark aura while staring at the high priest, leaving Saga in shock, until the high priest felt confusion when Smiley calmly stated that he was tired of seeing people die. He explained that he did not want to become a monster, and thus he fought in a way to avoid killing, causing a glimmer in Saga's eyes. A boy recalled what he saw in the Zikang arena, where the dead had no blade wounds, but rather deep bruises on their wrists and shoulders. It was madness. He did not understand the true intention of the enemy fighting in that manner. Even when the exiled bandits were eliminated, no one had died in those battles, as if everything was meticulously calculated. Saga, still confused, reflected on what his father said and on Smiley's true intentions during a deadly fight. The feeling he had from Smiley's words intrigued him. It was then that Saga's face was even more impressed when Smiley shouted, "But you came and massacred everyone." Smiley's face became increasingly grotesque as he bellowed, "You are not humans but demons." Saga was stunned by what he saw. The truth is that they had wiped everyone out, and with so many followers, filling the arena and the path through the forest towards the kingdom. Was it really possible that there were no armed faithful? He had walked there right after all the chaos, and Smiley had followed him from a distance, which only confirmed that he was keeping pace. But how so? Regaining some composure, the high priest drew his sword and spoke with disdain. "These countless battles did not manage to halt your advance. What vain creature do you think I am to believe such lies?" Upon hearing this, Smiley became even more insane, his expression twisting into a crazy smile. Clenching the chain tightly, he began to spin the weapon, accelerating the motion in front of the high priest as a provocation. However, the priest remained calm and retorted, "You dared to steal our weapon." But the boy simply ignored his words. The smiling face suddenly attacks, and the high priest watched the flying iron weight with disdain, aware that it was his most well-trained weapon. He easily blocks the chain with a small sword, calling the foolish attempt before diverting the chain, catching the surprised Smile. While the high priest was ready to counterattack, he pulled a sharp dagger from his pocket and threw it accurately at the boy, but underestimated the strength of the smiling face. Taking advantage of the gaps in the chain, the boy stopped the dagger while the priest distractedly struck a strong blow with the chain. A moment of carelessness sent the high priest flying backward, while the boy dodged just in time to avoid injury, allowing the smiling face to advance. He swung the chain once more towards the high priest, thrusting his hand into his pocket with a gentle smile while throwing something. It was the very dagger the man had thrown at him, now swiftly returning towards its owner, until a cutting sound preceded a rain of blood from the high priest's face. The dagger caused a deep cut on his face before falling to the ground. The smiling face quickly pulled back his chain, his smiling expression never wavering. Now agitated, the high priest found the boy's skill absurd and asked, "Who exactly are you?" But the boy had no intention of answering, stating that words changed nothing and challenging him to fight. Suddenly, the smiling visage distorted like the image of an old man in a blurry hallucination, but the high priest recognized this strange change and frowned. In his vision, he remembered a previous encounter with someone he revered, rekindling a vow to follow him. Now the face of the smiling one displayed a bizarre peculiarity, seeming to have two expressions at once, bewildering the high priest. He looked at the boy, experiencing a confusing mix of admiration, reverence, and terror he felt during his first encounter with the divinity. Why was this feeling, that which he had revered for so long, appearing now? No, this was impossible. Perhaps he had expected too much and had become weak from lack of worthy opponents. But suddenly he knelt and raised his hands in worship, offering himself as flesh for the sacrifice. The smiling face saw the opportunity and wrapped the chain around his waist, but the man quickly reacted and grabbed the chain. The high priest pulled the chain and took a step back, an unexpected move that confused the smiling face, before saying, "Since the first strike, I did not understand your intention in tying yourself to a great beast. In fact, you are the one being tossed from side to side." He let the smile linger. Beautiful. The high priest tried to distract himself to attack him with a knife, but luckily he dodged in time, leaning back to counterattack with a knife that the man easily deflected. Neither side yielded, as the sound of blades clashing echoed through the endless room, where both alternated between attack and defense. The sect leader focused his strength and advanced toward the smiling face, but he deflected the attack with his small dagger, while the sect leader intensified his speed to force him to show some weakness. The smiling face dodged each strike until they finally halted with their weapons crossed, the tide of battle shifting. The smiling face noticed something. Had he incorporated another layer of chains to his body during the fight? A wave of dread began to take hold of him with every change in the situation, every weapon exchange, and every glance they shared, because he felt he was fighting against entirely different entities. Watching the duel from a distant position, Saga's feelings stirred, realizing how the man's breathing, posture, gaze, and aura changed, These were not traits that could belong to a single person, leading him to scream that corpses began to appear. But the sect leader immediately dismissed his claim and refused to believe it. The sect leader told Saga that there were no corpses, while the smiling face let out a wicked grin and noted that just as there are gods for those who believe in them, corpses also emerge for those who believe in them, leaving Saga paralyzed with confusion. As the smiling face continued to speak, Saga recalled each opponent he had faced in battles, for that was the only way to understand people in the arena. Those memories haunted him day after day, endlessly. Even those he killed returned in his dreams to perpetuate an unending war, and he felt those battles twisting through his body, holding on to the fact that he would never forget a single moment. And of course, this included the High Priest. You are now connected to us too, and so everything became more intense. And that's it, dude, another crazy chapter completed. But hey, before you leave here all excited thinking you're immortal like the protagonist, go drink some water, man, hydrate yourself. It's a secret buffet that no one values. And of course, subscribe to the channel now because if you blinked, you've already missed half of the lore. Here it's just blow after blow. Now if this video does well, you already know, right? The continuation will come just like that. More chaos, more twists, and more humiliation for the enemy thinking he's the final boss. So don't mess it up, hit the like button, comment what you thought, and stay tuned for the next video.